Hey everyone, welcome to Deanji Winji. I am here again with new Dean's fiction. Dean was 4-year-old in trouble. Sounds interesting, let us see what happened. It was supposed to have been an easy hunt. Piece of cake, Dean had said. The creature they were after, an Edikopskapning, supposedly looked terrifying but wasn't he much of a threat. Up until recently, it had been considered nothing more than a Norwegian myth, but 7 years ago a hunter had found and killed one in North Dakota, and there had been a few unconfirmed sightings of others since. The giant spider-like creature keeps itself well hidden in caves and only comes out to feed. It is fearful of humans though, and will only attack and eat small children. Its only defense is its ability to shoot out sticky webs to trap people in while it flees. Bullets can harm but not kill it. Its real vulnerability is fire. At least that's what all of their intel had told them. Dean decided that he was going to track down the person who compiled the information and kill them. That is, if he could ever stop writhing on the cave floor and screaming in complete and total agony. Dean Winchester and his younger brother, Sam, had taken on a case in Kemmerer, Wyoming, and quickly assessed that the creature was probably an Edikopskapning. The missing children and overabundance of large sticky spider webs were a dead giveaway. They then called Bobby, who sent them all the information he had from the hunter who previously encountered the creature. After getting all of their supplies ready, including flare guns and homemade flamethrowers, they tracked the spider creature down to its cave. Dean had entered first, shining his flashlight into the damp, dark tunnel that seemed to go on forever. He held the flamethrower in his hands and swept the area as he walked. As the tunnel opened up into a large cavern, the hunter saw a huge web covering one of the walls. Another tunnel opposite of their position led off from the open area. It was the only other way out, so Dean assumed that it was where the Edikopskapning, or Eddie as Dean had named it, had gone. Halfway across the cavern, he realized his mistake. He'd forgotten that spiders can cling to the ceiling. One moment Dean was walking and the next, a large cow-sized spider dropped down in front of him. He stumbled backwards, bumping into Sam. Then they both leveled their weapons at the creature. Of course there was something else that they'd forgotten. Some spiders can jump pretty damn high. Eddie leaped over both of them and used its powerful back legs to push Sam into the web-covered wall. Dean saw his brother trying to pull free only to be squirted by more webbing that the creature was shooting out. But now it was the spider creature that had made a mistake. It was focused on trapping Sam and wasn't paying any attention to Dean. The older hunter took a step back and turned on the flamethrower. Fire licked at Eddie and the monster let out a wail and jumped once more. Dean spun around to keep track of it and found the beast facing him. He wondered why the thing hadn't turned to shoot webbing at him. Face to face, the Edikopskapning had no defense. Or at least that's what all the reports said. They were wrong. Before Dean could toast the creature, it opened its mouth and shot out a stream of some sort of liquid. The stuff hit Dean right in his face. The hunter dropped his weapon to the ground and clawed at his eyes, which were burning. Then the rest of his face felt like it was on fire as well. Dean fell to his knees, screaming in pain. In only moments, his whole body was in agony. He was being burned alive, but without the fire. Poison. The creature must have some sort of poison. Dean fell on his side, hands going from clutching at his face to hugging his middle and back again as he tried to find some way to alleviate the pain. But it was no use. His muscles and bones ached and his skin seemed to be pulling tightly against him. Everything felt wrong. And then, when he felt that he could take no more, Dean Winchester surrendered to the darkness. Supernatural, 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 supernatural. Sam struggled to pull himself free of the webs that held him securely in place. He was trapped by some sticky stuff that a creature shot out of its butt. Oh yeah, Dean was going to have a lot of fun at his expense for this one. Speaking of his older brother, Sam watched as the Edikopskapning jumped over Dean and turned to face him. It seemed like odd behavior for a monster that avoiding fighting adult humans. Then, without warning, the thing shot out a stream of liquid from its mouth. Sam watched in horror as Dean grabbed at his face and began to scream. He knew immediately that the liquid must be in some sort of venom. Sam had heard about spiders that used venom to begin the digestion process by liquefying their prey before consuming them. He prayed that wasn't what was happening to Dean. Then the spider creature moved, effectively blocking his brother from his sight. But he could still hear the screams. Sam redoubled his efforts to get free. He managed to get his right hand out, but he dropped his flamethrower when he been kicked into the webs, and he couldn't reach his flare gun. If he could just reach the pocket knife he kept in his left pocket, he'd be able to cut the webs away. But he couldn't reach it, so instead he kept trying to pull his other arm free. He was distracted by his brother's screams as they were becoming weaker and strangely more high-pitched. They didn't sound anything like Dean anymore. Then the cries abruptly stopped. The Edicop scapning moved closer to where the older hunter was. There was no way in hell that Sam would let that monster eat his brother. The hunter pulled his gun out and shot the thing in the back of its head. It let out a grunt of pain and turned on him. Sam took aim and shot it in one of its many eyes. Then another. And another. It wailed in agony and turned to flee the cavern. Sam watched it skitter down the tunnel they had entered from. They would be safer now. He turned his head to check on Dean and let out a gasp. His brother was lying on his side, turned away from Sam, but one look at him told the younger hunter that there was something very wrong. He couldn't see Dean's head or face because his arm was covering it up. Well, at least the sleeve of his jacket was. But the sleeve, along with most of the rest of Dean's wardrobe, seemed to be almost empty. The bottom part of the pant legs lay flat on the ground, and from around the knees up the clothes were only slightly filled. Sam's thoughts immediately went back to his earlier ideas about spider venom liquefying its prey. If that were the case, then Dean was already dead. Dean! Sam yelled as he pulled and tugged against the webs. Dean, can you hear me? There was no verbal response, but Sam could have sworn he saw the clothes shift slightly. With all his might he pulled his left hand from the webbing. As soon as it was free, the hunter retrieved his knife and quickly cut away the rest of the sticky trap. Then he ran to his brother's side. Sam dropped down to his knees but hesitated before turning Dean over. If his brother was being melted away by spider creature venom, then that was something that Sam really didn't want to see. But a tiny sounding moan spurred him into action. Grabbing Dean's shoulder, which felt way too small under the jacket and shirts, Sam rolled his brother over. There was a moment of confusion as Sam stared down at the little child that had somehow gotten into this cave and snuck inside his brother's clothes. But then he recognized the boy. He'd seen his picture before. This was the same child that had smiled into the camera while sitting with his mom, dad, and infant brother. And Sam had been the infant in that picture. The little boy that now lay on the ground in front of him was none other than Dean Winchester. A 4-year-old Dean Winchester. Sam stared at the small child who, just a few minutes ago, had been his older brother. His brain was having a hard time processing that this was really Dean. The little boy let out another tiny moan and rolled his head to the side. Dean? Sam quietly called to his brother. There was no response. He went to touch the boy's face but hesitated. There was still some of the Edicop scapning's venom on his skin, and Sam wasn't sure if it would be safe for him to come into contact with it. He was certain that it was the reason behind his brother's unusual condition and didn't want to meet the same fate himself. Taking the bag of supplies he'd been carrying, Sam rummaged through and retrieved a bottle of water. Then he took off his jacket and overshirt and soaked the latter with the water. Sam used the wet cloth to carefully wash off Dean's face. The boy made another small noise, but did not wake. Sam looked at Dean's currently much too large clothing. The shirt had some venom on it, but the rest of the outfit was fine. Of course the clothing was useless to Dean while he was this size. Sam used his knife to cut open the t-shirt and then pulled his brother from the clothes. Kicking the dirty shirt aside, Sam lay the naked child down in Dean's leather jacket and wrapped his little big brother up. After replacing his own jacket, he gently lifted the boy up, pulling the small body close to his chest. Sam's eyes widened in surprise as he felt Dean's head snuggle closer into him. Then the now older brother picked up his bag and his weapons and started walking out of the cave. Sam kept on alert, but reached the exit with no problems. The hike back to the Impala, which they left in a rest-stop parking area a few miles away, was long and rather difficult while holding the unconscious child and all their gear. Sam had to stop to rest several times, sitting down with Dean cradled in his lap. During those breaks, Sam couldn't help but stare at his brother. He looked exactly like he had when he was 4. It was just like looking at the old family photo, but this little guy was not just some keepsake from days past. This was really Dean. And he was actually pretty cute. His soft hair was lighter in color and longer than Dean usually kept it. His eyes, although currently closed, were large and round, and his nose seemed a little too small for his face. His freckles stood out from his pale skin. The boy's body was a bit on the thin side, and he was maybe a little short for his age. Sam wasn't certain of that, as he had very little experience with small children. Looking at his brother, Sam felt extremely protective and wondered if that was how Dean always felt about him. As Sam continued walking, he tried very hard not to panic about what he was going to do with his pint-sized brother. Hundreds of questions and worries entered his mind, but he pushed them away. He couldn't afford to freak out yet. First, he needed to get Dean to safety and check him over completely. Then, once Dean woke up, please God let him wake up okay, he'd figure out what to do from there. Oh, and he'd have to call Bobby. The older hunter would know what to do. He always did. Sam breathed a sigh of relief as he reached the parking lot. He picked up his pace as he neared the Impala, but was stopped by a voice from behind him. "Is your son okay? Did he get hurt, or is he just sleeping? You know, that is not a hiking trail. You really shouldn't be taking a small child out there." Sam turned around, holding Dean even closer to himself, and came face to face with an old woman. She must have been at least 80 years old and was shooting Sam a look of disapproval. She wore a hideous floral pattern dress and an equally ugly sun hat. "I know, Marem. But after a long car ride, he really needed to stretch his legs, so I figured a walk would do him some good. He fell asleep on the way back." "Is that a gun you're holding?" The old woman's eyes were drawn to his flamethrower. I think it's an air gun or something. I found it while walking and picked it up so no kids would find it and get hurt. I'll take it to the police station." Sam wanted to get out of there before he ran out of excuses, but he had to get rid of the old lady first. She'd flip out if she saw him put Dean in the back seat of the car without a car seat. He just prayed that she didn't notice that the boy wasn't wearing anything under the large leather jacket. "Well, make sure you do. The police should arrest whatever hooligan leaves dangerous weapons lying around in a public place. What is this world coming to? I mean, just last night on the news, the 6 o'clock news, mind you, since I would never stay up so late to see the 10 o'clock news, I saw the most awful." "Grandma, that's enough." A man in his mid-30s had walked over and placed his hand on the old lady's shoulder. "I'm sure this young man has to get his son home," the woman huffed. "You young people don't even care about all this violence, do you? It's all old hat to you. A man kills his wife and you don't even blink. That's what is wrong with this world." "Yes, Grandma, we know. It's very sad." The man offered Sam a look of apology as he led the lady away. But before they got into their car, the woman turned back and shook her finger at Sam. "Now you take care of that little one." "I will," Sam assured her. After they had driven off, Sam reached into Dean's jacket pocket and pulled out the car keys. He unlocked and opened the back door, then gently placed Dean down on the seat, making sure he was still wrapped up tightly in the jacket. After his brother was settled, Sam stowed the weapons and gear in the trunk. He got in the driver's seat, started the car, and drove out of the parking lot and away from the rest area. The half-hour drive back to their motel was uneventful. Sam was a little nervous about the fact that Dean still had not woken up. He tried to remind himself that his brother's body had just gone through quite a bit and that he was probably just recuperating. But still he couldn't stop worrying. Sam carried Dean into the dingy motel room that had been their home for the last couple of days. He laid the small boy down on the bed furthest from the door. Sam made sure that Dean lay on top of the blanket, since the sheets looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks and were covered with questionable stains. Then Sam removed the leather jacket from the tiny body and checked the child over to make sure there was no damage done to him. Except for the obvious age issue, Dean seemed to be all right. He had a couple of red splotches on his face from where the Edicopscapning's venom had irritated his sensitive skin, but they were beginning to fade. All things considered, his brother seemed to be in good condition. Sam rummaged through Dean's duffel bag and produced a black t-shirt. He pulled it over the boy's head and threaded the small stick-like arms through the sleeves. Then he retrieved the blanket from the other bed and covered his brother up. Once he was certain that Dean was as comfortable as could be in a cheap hotel room with lumpy mattresses, he sat down at the table and pulled out his cell phone. Bobby picked up on the third ring. "Hello." "Hey, Bobby, Sam. You boys ganked that spider thing yet?" About that. What happened? Was that hunter the only source of information you had about the creature?" "Craig's the only one I know who's ever encountered one of them before." "Well, his intel was a little incomplete." Sam heard Bobby sigh. "I'll ask again what happened." "It spit some kind of venom on Dean." "Is he all right?" "Yes, it's weird, Bobby. Even for us." "Just spit it out, Sam. What's wrong with your brother?" "By the time the Edicop scapning fled and I got to him, the damage was done." Bobby, he's 4 years old." There was silence on the other end. "Come again?" "He's 4 years old. I found him lying on his side unconscious, practically buried in his clothes, looking exactly like he did when he was 4. More silence followed. "Is this some kind of prank?" "'Cause I ain't laughing my ass off if it is. I'm telling the truth." "Bulls." "Yeah, that's what I was thinking." "Is he still Dean?" "What do you mean? Does your brother remember his life, who he is? Or does he think he's a 4-year-old kid?" Sam ran the hand that wasn't clutching the phone through his hair. "I don't know, Bobby. He hasn't woken up yet. He's been out since the attack." Then a thought hit him. "What am I going to do if he does remember and he wakes up looking for Mom and Dad?" "Don't go losing your head. We don't know what's gonna happen when he wakes up, so keep calm for now." "Bobby, I don't know what to do." "You're gonna wait for Dean to wake from his beauty rest, see what's going on in that thick skull of his, get him some clothes since I doubt you got anything that's gonna fit him, and then get your asses over here. In the meantime, I'm gonna see what I can dig up on this new development." "That sound like a plan to you?" "Yeah." "Thanks, Bobby. But what about the creature?" "It got away. If it got away, it's long gone by now. It ain't gonna return to its cave if it thinks the place is dangerous now. We'll have to track it all over again. But right now we gotta concentrate on taking care of Dean." Sam nodded even though he knew Bobby couldn't see the gesture. "Of course Dean's top priority." He agreed. Then a groan from the bed caught his attention. Dean's eyelids were fluttering slightly and he was shifting under the blanket. "I have to go. I think he's waking up. Take care of your brother, Sam." "I will." As Sam hung up the phone, he wondered if Dean always felt the slight panic he was feeling now when put in charge of caring for his younger sibling. Dean felt the darkness evaporating as his brother's voice invaded his unconscious country. He felt tired and groggy and his body felt incorrect. That was the handiest word to describe it. He wasn't in pain besides for a moderate burning sensation on his face, but something felt very off. Dean let loose a groan as he shifted and tried to open his eyes. His body appeared to withstand his efforts, looking nothing greater than to tug him return below the gentle lull of sleep. However, Dean had to awaken. He had to know what becoming correct with him. He remembered Eddie spitting in his face, then an awful lot of pain, and then not anything. He was hoping that half of his face wasn't melted off or something gross like that. That would just suck. "I have to pass. I assume he is waking up." Sam ought to have been speak me at the smartphone to someone due to the fact Dean heard no response, but then Sam stated I can. He heard footsteps as his brother walked over to the mattress Dean become lying on. Mattress? How did he get back to the resort? There has been no way Sam may want to have carried him all of the way again to the auto, but he was certain that this turned into the first time he'd woken for the reason that spider creature puked on him. Dean pressured his eyes open and saw Sam's status over him with a clearly concerned expression on his face. Oh, crap. This wasn't he going to be precise. "Dean? Howdy, are you okay?" His voice became only a tad too gentle. Dean licked his dry lips in education to talk and realized that his enamel felt unusual. Ignoring it when you consider that he had no concept what it may imply, Dean replied his brother. "Yeah." And that was all he said because something turned into very wrong together with his voice. It wasn't the difficult, gravelly tone he became used to listening to, but a tender, childish one. "What the hell? Do you realize who I'm? Sam asked. The weird query interrupted his thoughts and made him briefly neglect the complete voice problem. Dude, what the hell type of question is that? Direction, I realize who you're. I'm now not mind lifeless or whatever, and there has been that childlike voice announcing his words for him. And what the hell is inaccurate with me? He saw comfort pass over Sam's features. Look man, do not freak out, however the spider creature's venom did something to you. A virtually terrible notion crossed Dean's thoughts. I'm now not turning into one of those fuglies, am I? No. No, it's not anything like that. Dean failed to sense like wasting any greater time asking questions. He sat up in mattress and started out to push the covers off of himself. However, then he got to have a look at his arms. His tiny little hands with tiny little palms that have been tons too small for a 12 months vintage man. And that they had been attached to equally small, skinny hands that have been dwarfed by the black tea blouse he was carrying. Coronary heart racing, Dean ripped the blanket off of himself and stared down at the relaxation of his tiny frame. The T-shirt covered him to his knees, but he became sure that it would almost touch his toes if he had been to rise up. As he gazed at the child-sized body that could not probably be his, he felt surprise start to set in. He began to tremble and felt tears prickle at the back of his eyes. Dean pressured himself not to cry though. Sam, what the hell is wrong with me? He repeated his question from in advance. I am not positive, Dean. You seem like for years vintage once more, except now it seems that the exchange is most effective bodily because you manifestly do not forget the whole lot out of your life. How will we restoration this? Dean puzzled, now not even looking to recollect the opportunity that the exchange turned into everlasting. I don't know. Yet. But Bobby's operating on it and we are going to head available to peer him. It is a 14-hour drive, so there may be a great hazard he's going to have solutions by the point we get there. Dean nodded, nonetheless working hard to repress the panic that was bubbling internal of him. Yeah, okay. How are you feeling? Are you in any ache? No. I sense kinda weird and my face feels sunburned, however that is it. Proper. That's exact. There was a clumsy silence because the brothers looked for something to say. Eventually Dean spoke. So, what happened after it sprayed me with that crap and that I blacked out? Idea it became going to consume you and the only weapon I may want to reach became my gun. I shot the thing inside the lower back of its head and its eyes and it ran off. Then I were given unfastened and carried you out of there. So it were given away? Yeah. Bobby says we're going to must track it to a new hiding spot once we get you constant up. However shouldn't we begin monitoring it now? You are now not taking place any hunt searching like that. Dean desired to argue, however he knew that Sam turned into right. He'd be not anything however a liability on a hunt proper now. He just hated the concept of a person else getting attacked via Eddie because he screwed up the activity. With a sigh he swung his legs off the side of the mattress and dropped to the floor. Dean stumbled and almost fell, not awaiting his legs to be so short. This tiny frame changed into going to take some getting used to. In which are you going? Sam requested. Toilet, dude. I gotta take a pee. The plumbing is probably smaller but it nonetheless desires to be drained. Do you need any assist? Not funny. Dean shot again earlier than realizing that Sam turned into being extreme. Good day, I have been potty trained a long time now. That's now not what I intended. It is simply you might not be capable of attaining the rest room. I'll manage. Dean made his way throughout the room and to the small bathroom. His in advance wager was correct. The tea blouse hung to simply above his ankles. One in all his bony shoulders poked out the shirt collar. Dean knew that he need to look ridiculous. As soon as within the rest room, he shut the door and leaned against it. The boy closed his eyes and took a deep breath, combating to maintain his feelings below control. It was a whole lot more difficult than standard. After a second he walked over to the rest room. Searching at it he felt nearly like crying. Sam have been proper. The bathroom turned into too large. However, the concept of asking his younger brother, "You are the more youthful brother now," a voice in his head mocked him for assist to P changed into simply manner too humiliating. Dean felt his face heat up with just the concept of it. So instead he opened the small closet and pulled out the tub towels one after the other. Then he carried them over and positioned them one on pinnacle of the other in the front of the toilet. After that become achieved, Dean struggled out of the tea blouse so he would not journey over it. Except, he wasn't sure a way to maintain it up whilst peeing and didn't he want to by chance get it moist. Sam would never allow him stay that down. Now absolutely naked, Dean carefully climbed up on the pile of towels, opened the lid, and relieved himself. While he turned into achieved, he closed the lid, flushed, then climbed onto the bathroom to attain the sink next to him so he may want to wash his fingers. Once the water became turned off and he become again at the ground, Dean eyed the shower stall. However, one look advised him that he want help attaining the knobs and it wasn't like he should carry the towels into the shower with him. Dean became approximately to place his tea blouse lower back on when he stuck sight of the overall period mirror on the toilet door. As though in a trance, he walked slowly towards it, looking at his mirrored image. But no, that tiny little boy couldn't be him. Due to the fact that tiny little boy could not save humans or hunt matters. And that tiny little boy really couldn't hold Sammy secure. That tiny little boy was vain. He turned into useless, and then there were tears streaming down the kid's face. Dean appeared away, now not looking to hear himself cry. He desired to forestall the waterworks, however he couldn't. What became wrong with him? Dean did not just appear like a 4-year vintage, he felt like one. Now he understood why small kids threw mood tantrums all of the time. The feelings he felt simply appeared too huge for his small body to address. And even Dean Winchester, who discovered to suppress his feelings while nonetheless in grade school, could not deal with the rollercoaster occurring inner of himself. A knock at the door interrupted his mind. "Dean, UK in there?" Dean wiped away any hint of the tears. "Yeah, I'm first rate. Should you please come activate the bathe?" He grabbed the shirt from the floor and wrapped it around his waist. He knew that Sam had already visible him bare like this, however it becomes still damned embarrassing. The door opened and Sam got herein. Dean watched the tons taller man go over to the shower, take the shampoo bottle and soap from the high shelf and place them at the ground wherein Dean could attain them, turn the water on, or even test the temperature. Then his brother grew to become to him and smiled. "Ready." The boy walked over to the stall and waited for Sam to go away. He didn't. "Dude, I'm no longer showering in the front of you. I cannot leave you in the shower on my own. I am now not a kid." Dean all but yelled. Sam gave the impression of he changed into going to argue that factor but instead answered, "You're nevertheless getting used to being this length. In case you slip and fall you could get critically hurt. I'll turn around and that I may not look unless you ask for assist." "Okay?" "Excellent." Dean mumbled, sure that become the excellent provide he get. While the shower turned into over and boy did it experience true to get clean, Dean dried himself off and positioned the oversized tea blouse again on. Sam, I am respectable, there is a first time for the whole lot." Sam responded as he grew to become lower back around to face his brother. "Ha ha. You are a rebel. I've packed up all our matters. We will head out as soon as I clutch a bath." Sam informed him. "We're going to Bobby S., right? First we are going to Walmart to get you a few clothes. I'm not going into a shop dressed like this. Properly, I am not leaving you here on my own. It's now not safe so that you can be for your own in a sell-off like this even as you are for years vintage. Additionally, the closest shop is an hour or so away and it'd be a large waste of time to pressure there and then must power all the manner lower back to pick you up. Cannot you simply go straight to Bobby S. and depart me there even as you store? Will should stop for food at the manor and that I doubt you want to enter a eating place dressed in only a blouse. Besides, do you honestly believe me to select out clothes for you in the kid S section? No manner, dude. You are so gay that I would in all likelihood turn out to be with Hey Kitty and Tinkerbell." Sam laughed. "Then you definitely coming with me to Walmart." "Very well." Dean eventually agreed. "I'll wait for you out there." Dean nodded closer to the door. He was pretty much to stroll out when Sam known as after him. Don't depart the hotel room. Yeah, I know. The world is a risky place for little Deanie. I got it, Dean made positive to slam the toilet door shut in the back of him. He'd simplest been conscious at this age for an hour or so and already it turned into severely frustrating. Being a child sucked and something become telling him that matters might worsen before they got better. Dean sat in the back of the Impala feeling miserable. He wanted to drive his baby more than anything right now since that was one of the only things that consistently gave him comfort. But he couldn't and if they didn't reverse what had been done to him, then he wouldn't be driving for 12 more years. Or, even worse, he may never get behind the wheel again if for some reason the venom not only de-aged him but halted his aging process as well. Nope, not thinking about that. Sam kept glancing back at him in the rearview mirror, looking concerned and a little anxious. Dean knew that his brother was trying to help him, especially when the older sibling put in one of the Metallica tapes, but nothing was making the boy feel better. He hated his new body, his out-of-control emotions which he was not going to tell Sam about, and all of the restrictions he now had. And every time he considered the possibility that he'd be stuck this way he felt like crying. You okay back there, Dean? Peachy, you know that I can't let you ride up front. If we passed a cop car we'd be pulled over for sure. I know. They had already had that discussion when they were getting in the car earlier. Do you want me to turn up the music? Well, that was a first. And not an offer that Dean could ever turn down. Sure. Thanks, no problem. The volume of the music was raised a bit and Dean began to nod his head to the rhythm and sing along. Where do I take this pain of mine I run, but it stays right my side so tear me open, pour me out there's things inside that scream and shout and the pain still hates mezzo hold me, until it sleeps, just like the curse, just like the stray you feed it once, and now it stays so tear me open, but beware, there's things inside without a care and the dirt still stains mezzo wash me, until I'm clean. He was just getting really into it, raising his childish little voice as loud as it could go, when the car stopped and the radio turned off. We're here, Sam announced. Dean made a face. He was annoyed that his song had been interrupted and he was still reluctant to go into the store dressed the way he was. But he had no choice in the matter. Sam opened the back door and reached in to pick Dean up. Hey, hands off. I can walk. You're not walking across the parking lot or in the store with no shoes on. Fine. Dean gave in. He sighed. Giving in to Sam seemed to be the theme of the day. Sam pulled him out of the car and held him tightly to his chest. Dean was torn between telling Sam to take it easy and loosen his grip before he crushed the boy's small body or giving in to his 4-year-old instincts by holding his brother just as tight and lying his head on the man's shoulder. He settled for doing neither and just letting himself be carried into Walmart. Once inside, Sam placed Dean in the back of one of the shopping carts and began pushing him down the aisles towards the children's department. Dean drew his knees up to his chest and pulled the shirt down to his ankles. He was as covered as he was going to be. After a minute, the older Winchester stopped to look at a display of discounted bags of candy, the perfect road trip snack, when a pretty, young woman parked her carriage next to them. A small dark-haired toddler in a bright pink dress sat in the child's seat sucking her thumb. The woman was about to grab a bag of gummy bears when she caught sight of Dean. Is that child wearing just a t-shirt? She sounded horrified as she glared at Sam. Yeah. When Sam faltered, obviously not having thought through a good lie, Dean decided to give his brother a break. Yeah, he chimed in, pouring as much cuteness and innocence into his expression and voice as possible. We flew here but the plane lost my stuff and I was sad, so Daddy let me wear his shirt and took me here to buy all new stuff. He did? The woman put on the fake enthusiastic voice many adults use when speaking to small children. Dean felt sorry for the woman's daughter. Well, what a nice daddy you have. She sent a smile at the man she'd been staring daggers at only moments before. He's really cute. You're lucky to have him. Sam nodded. Yes, I am. And you too. He pointed to the little girl. The woman smiled again, grabbed the bag of candy, and with a wave she resumed her shopping trip. Sam let out a sigh of relief. Thanks, Dean. Dude, you totally owe me. Sam pulled a bag of Raisinets, a bag of chocolate-covered pretzels, and a bag of peanut M&Ms off the rack and threw them to Dean. Does this settle the debt? It's a start. You know, If we weren't in such a rush to get to Bobby S, I totally could VE hooked you up with her. What? Sam looked at Dean as if he were nuts. Dude, she was into you. Chicks dig guys with little kids. She had a baby, Dean, but no wedding band. Sam just shook his head in disbelief and continued their trip to the kids' clothing section. When they arrived at their destination, Dean stood up and raised his arms. Help me out of here. You still don't have shoes. Don't care. I'm going to pick out my own clothes, so get me out of this cart before I have to try and climb out on my own. It was Sam's turn to relent. Once Dean standing on the floor, he immediately began sorting through the clothes, looking for something that matched his tastes. Sam stepped over to the shelf of underwear and socks while Dean looked at the jeans. He remembered the sizes from when he had to help their father shop for Sammy. He was now 4, so he picked up a pair of footy pants and held them up to himself. They were a little big, but nothing that a belt wouldn't fix. Dean tossed 2 pairs into the cart, then looked at the t-shirts. Most were terribly lame. Dean pitied all of the little guys out there that had to wear that crap. Why in the world did no one consider that making plain black tees for kids was a great idea? Then he grinned. A black Batman t-shirt that featured a large but symbol on the chest joined the jeans in the cart. Next he picked out a dark blue t-shirt with skulls and crossbones that read "Bad to the Bone." Then a grey tee with a black outline of a guitar. Finally he selected a black t-shirt that proclaimed nothing but trouble. Satisfied that he wouldn't look like a complete dork, he was about to ask Sam to put him back in the cart when something caught his eye. No way? That's awesome. Dean ran over to the rack and started looking through the flannel shirts that hung there. There was a blue one, a black one, and a red one that would fit him. Denim, tees, and overshirts all in his size. Maybe being a kid didn't suck that badly. Dean, don't wander that far away. Sam scolded as he approached him. With a shrug, the boy tossed the shirts in the carriage. Sam sighed, but obviously decided it was better to drop the subject. He looked into the cart. Grab another pair of jeans. And we should pick out at least 2 more shirts. Seriously? I don't need a whole new wardrobe, dude. This is only temporary, but we don't know how long it will last and we should be prepared. Dean tossed another pair of jeans in and looked at the shirts on display. There's no other good shirts. What about cars? I'm not wearing a shirt that has a big cartoon car with eyes and a mouth. That's just dumb. Superman? Superman gay. No, he's not. Did you see his long girly hair in the 90s? Fine. What about this one? It doesn't have any pictures on it. I'm not wearing a striped polo shirt. Why not? Sam was beginning to sound tired. 'Cause then I'd look gay, Dean. There was a warning of complete loss of patience in his tone. It amused Dean to no end. But he also didn't want to push his brother too far. So he redoubled his efforts to find at least one more suitable t-shirt. Finally he picked out a dark green shirt with a picture of a small lizard on the left breast. It wasn't too bad, and under a flannel shirt the picture wouldn't even be noticeable. Appeased by the compromise, Sam put Dean back in the carriage. They grabbed a belt on their way out of the clothing section and then went to the shoe department. Okay, Dean. Sam lifted him once more from the cart. Stand on the shoe ruler right there so I can see what size you need. Dean did as asked and then was placed back in the shopping cart. He was starting to feel a little like luggage. Sam tossed a pair of shoes into the child's seat where Dean assumed he also kept the packages of socks and underwear. Then they were off to the child supplies section. Dean cringed when he realized that Sam was taking him down the aisle that displayed the car seats. No way, man. I'm not sitting in a baby seat. Dean, you have to. We have a long ride to Bobby S and I'm not risking getting pulled over by the cops. Besides, if we got into an accident you'd be killed for sure without one of those. I'm not a baby. Dean complained. This was beyond humiliating. I know, Dean. But I don't want anything happening to you. Besides, look. We can get one of those backless booster seats. You're big enough for one of them and they look nothing like a regular car seat. Dean didn't answer, so Sam started looking at them. Do you want blue flames or green camouflage? When Dean still didn't reply, Sam sighed in frustration. I can always get the one with pink and purple peace signs. That would look great in the Impala. You wouldn't he? Try me. Blue flames. Dean decided. He knew he was being difficult. Sam was trying his best to make this whole experience as painless as possible, and Dean was being a jerk to him. He silently vowed to try and be a little nicer. Besides, with Dean in this state, Sam could really screw him over if he didn't clean up his act a bit. The shopping done, the brothers stopped at the Subway at the front of the store and shared a meatball sub with some potato chips and a Coke. Then they proceeded to the checkout. Once everything was paid for, Sam pushed the cart to the service desk. Dean watched as his brother went through the bags and put an entire outfit in one. "Excuse me, ma'am?" Sam got the service clerk's attention. "I need to go into the bathroom with my son. Could you please keep an eye on my carriage?" "Not a problem, sir." "Hi, cutie." She waved at Dean. He smiled and waved back at the woman. Sam picked Dean up and carried him and the bag to the restroom. When they were in the bathroom, Sam put Dean down inside the handicap stall and handed the bag to him. "Get dressed. Then we can leave." "Okay." Dean closed the door after Sam stepped out and stood on tiptoes to lock it. He pulled the black t-shirt off and dropped it on the floor. Then Dean opened the shopping bag and grabbed the package of underwear. "Sam, why did you get me Spider-Man underwear?" "Because I didn't think you wanted Mickey Mouse or SpongeBob." "Yeah, good call," Dean admitted. "But the thought of having spiders in that area after what happened to me is just unnerving." He heard Sam laugh. Dean opened the package and pulled on a pair of the red and blue underwear. Next he removed the tags and stickers from the jeans, put them on, and then tightened them with the belt. Sam had put the grey guitar tee and the black flannel shirt in the bag. Dean put them on and rolled up the shirt sleeves to his elbows. He was just pulling on a pair of white and grey socks when he heard the restroom door open. "What do you think was wrong with that guy?" a voice asked. The man sounded middle-aged. "Probably drugs." Someone responded. "What kind of drugs does that to a person's eyes though?" They looked completely black. Dean's eyes widened upon hearing that. "Demon? Here?" He doubted they had come for the rollback prices. "I don't know, but I sure hope he's not still standing by the bathroom door when we leave." Guy gave me the creeps. The conversation ended as Dean heard 2 bathroom stall doors close and lock. Then there was a light tap at his door. Dean opened it and looked up at Sam. "Dean." "Yeah, I heard." Sam's voice was just above a whisper. "I'm going to check it out. Stay here and don't leave this stall or even unlock it again until I'm back." "Okay." Dean nodded. Sam pulled out a pocket knife and handed it to Dean. They both knew it would do no good as protection against demons, but Dean felt better holding a weapon and Sam seemed to understand that. "Be careful, Sam." "I will." And then Dean was alone. He relocked the door, shoved the knife into his jeans pocket and then put on his new shoes. They had a Spider-Man design on them and they lit up whenever he took a step. What the hell had Sam been thinking? Dean was putting the oversized black t-shirt into the shopping bag when he heard both of the other occupied stalls open. A moment later there was a knock at his door. "Taking a pee in here," he called out. Not a second later, the door was kicked in. 2 middle-aged men walked into the handicap stall and stared at Dean. They both wore cocky, somewhat amused expressions on their faces and their eyes were pure black. There was nowhere for Dean to go. The handicap stall was much larger than a regular bathroom stall, but it was still a tiny place to be trapped with 2 demon-possessed guys. They completely blocked his way out. Dean briefly considered trying to crawl under the stall to escape, but quickly dismissed that plan of action. There was just no way he'd make it under and to freedom before one of the guys could grab him. He pulled the pocket knife out, flicked out the blade, and held it in front of himself. "Oh, no." The taller of the 2 men mocked him. The man was balding and slightly overweight but was probably almost as tall as Sam. Dean recognized his voice. He was the guy who had entered the bathroom earlier and said he'd seen someone with black eyes. "Look, the little baby's got a knife. I guess we're in trouble now." The other demon laughed. He was about a foot shorter than his friend but was built like a boxer. Both demons pulled out hunting knives much larger than Dean's. "Stay back," Dean warned, embarrassed that his voice broke on those words. His heart was beating like crazy, as if trying to break right out of his little chest. Those damned 4-year-old emotions he'd been wrestling with ever since waking up were now almost suffocating him with fear. It didn't help that the adult portion of his mind acknowledged that these two could very easily kill him. "Why don't you make us?" Boxer replied. "Don't challenge him or he might throw a temper tantrum." Baldy teased. "Or I might just throw your ugly asses back to hell." Dean shot back at him. The words might have had more impact if he hadn't felt his small body begin to tremble. Boxer advanced towards the boy, while Baldy held back to continue blocking the exit. Dean stepped backwards and felt his lower back hit the toilet. He was trapped and had to face the fact that the demon would be able to gut him long before his short arm would come close enough to attack his opponent. Dean glanced over at Baldy and felt a smile come to his face. Because, standing right behind the pudgy demon-possessed man was Sam, and in Sam's hand was the demon-killing knife. Baldy's throat was slit before he even knew what was happening. Boxer heard his companion's body hit the floor and turned to see Sam rushing him. The older Winchester slashed with the knife, but the demon blocked it and used a karate move that disarmed the hunter. The knife fell to the floor just inches away from Dean's brand new Spider-Man shoes. The boy quickly closed the pocket knife and put it away. Then he picked up the demon-killing weapon. He looked on as his brother faced off with the demon. "Nice diversion," Sam commented. "Make up a story about a black-eyed man to get me to leave Dean alone." "Clever. What made you come back?" the possessed man asked. "There was no one out there. You probably knew that and figured I'd spend some time looking for the guy, but I wasn't going to leave Dean in here alone. I was about to open the restroom door when I heard this stall door get kicked in. Not too subtle of you, so you snuck inside and tried to kill us. Nice plan, but you lost your knife. How did you find us? How did you even know what happened to Dean?" Sam's eyes flickered briefly to Dean but didn't linger, so as not to draw attention to the child. Dean was inch by inch closing the distance between himself and the demon. "I saw you carry him from the creature's lair. You were watching us? Such violence in this world, don't you think?" The demon laughed. "You were in that old woman?" Sam seemed surprised. Dean had no clue what they were talking about, but he was almost close enough to strike, and he was the lady's grandson. Boxer nodded at Baldy. "You never even had a clue. And your brother's condition is just too perfect. This makes him an easy target. You Lucifer needs alive, but Dean Winchester is nothing but a pain in the ass. You want a pain? Try this." Dean spat out as he stepped around and in front of the demon and stabbed him in the guts. Unfortunately, his new body wasn't nearly as strong and the knife didn't penetrate enough to kill the black-eyed bastard. Boxer let out a cry of pain and rage and backhanded Dean across the face. The force of the blow sent him tumbling back. Dean fell and hit the back of his head on the toilet before collapsing onto the ground. The boy lay there trying to blink away the spots dancing across his vision. He heard Sam call his name and then yell some profanities at the demon. Dean looked over just in time to see his brother push the knife further into the possessed man. The boy's vision blacked out for a moment, and when the room came back into focus he saw Sam kneeling in front of him. "Dean? Hey, buddy, are you okay?" Dean wanted to say he was fine. He wanted to make some wise-ass crack. He wanted to get up and leave the restroom, possibly kicking Boxer's body on the way out. But instead he burst into tears. He was scared, in pain, and embarrassed, and he just couldn't control the emotions any longer. Dean felt Sam scoop him up into his arms and carry him away from the bathroom stall. He was taken out of the restroom and to the service desk, where Sam readjusted his hold on his brother so he could push the shopping cart without putting the boy down. Then Sam carried him through the parking lot and placed him in the back seat of the Impala. He heard the trunk open, stuff get tossed inside, and then the trunk was closed. Sam got into the driver's seat and started the car. Dean curled up on his side on the seat and just kept crying. "I want to put some distance between us and the store. I'll stop in a bit to install the booster seat, okay?" Dean didn't respond as the car drove out of the Walmart parking lot. Supernatural, 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 supernatural. Sam stopped the car outside of the motel and looked into the back seat. His brother was slumped over in the booster seat, the seatbelt the only thing keeping him from falling over. The boy had fallen asleep an hour ago, not long after they stopped to put in the booster seat. Sam had been pleased to discover that the safety item just sat on the seat and was held in place by a combination of the child's weight and the car's seat belt. No long, labor-intensive installation had been required. By the time they reached the rest area, Dean had stopped crying and was trying to pretend that it had never happened. Sam was confused by the odd display of behavior. Dean may look like a child but had proven to still be himself, yet the crying fit had definitely not been typical of his brother. He wondered if Dean was feeling the emotions of a typical 4-year-old child. It would make sense, seeing as to how a person's emotions were controlled by a mix of brain chemistry and hormones, and both of those things would have to have been affected by Dean's transformation. But Sam hadn't considered this before now because Dean's memories were intact and he acted normal. But apparently acted was the key word there. Obviously Dean had decided not to let his brother know that he was dealing with the childlike emotions, probably feeling that it would make him seem weak. Damn stubborn jerk. Sam got out of the car and walked around to the back door. He opened it, released the seatbelt, and picked Dean up. There was no way he'd leave his brother in the car as he went to go check in. Dean stirred and blinked sleepily. Sammy? Go back to sleep. Dean, where are we? At a motel. I'm going to get us a room for the night. We can finish the drive to Bobby's tomorrow. I already called to let him know. Put me down. I can walk. The boy started struggling in his arms. Dean, just relax. You need rest. Dude, I'm fine. Put me down. With a mental shrug, Sam placed Dean on the asphalt. The boy stumbled a little and rubbed his eyes. Sam grabbed his hand and started towards the office. I don't need to be led around. Dean complained. Just hold my hand, Dean. Fine. But there was no defiance in his tone this time. Just tired acceptance. If Dean noticed that this was a more upscale motel than they usually slept in, he didn't mention it. Sam didn't want to crash in one of their usual crappy motels and risk some pervert going after his brother. Of course it might be humorous to see Dean tell them off and kick them in the nuts, but Sam didn't want the little guy getting hurt. Again. He couldn't believe he'd been stupid enough to leave the kid alone in the bathroom with 2 demons. Dean still had his mind, his quick thinking, and his hunter instincts, but he couldn't physically defend himself. Can I help you, sir? A woman in her early 30s asked from behind the check-in counter. Christo. Sam mumbled. Better safe than sorry. The woman didn't react except to give him a confused look. Excuse me? No demon there. Oh, I said hello. Oh. Well, hi. I need a room for my son and I. Just for overnight. Not a problem. She typed away at the computer as he handed her a credit card. After a moment she handed him back the card and a key. You'll be in room 11. Then she smiled brightly and reached over the counter to hand Dean a bright red lollipop. And this is for you, kiddo. Just don't eat it until your daddy says it's okay. Sam watched as Dean favored her with a brilliant grin. Thanks a lot, Marem. You're welcome, sweetie. Cute kid you got there. She informed Sam. Thanks. Sam nodded to her, took Dean's hand and left the office. As soon as they were out of earshot, Dean looked up at Sam. Dude, I'm only 4 and chicks still prefer me. Gotta step up your game there, Sammy. Shut up, Dean. Sam replied. But it was great to hear him sound like his old self again. They grabbed their bags from the trunk and got into their room. Once inside, Dean took out the salt and put lines by the door and windows. Sam stood up on a chair and drew a devil's trap right above the front entrance. He felt a little bad about leaving satanic-looking symbols in such a nice motel, but Dean's safety came first. Maybe he'd leave a little cash behind to pay for the ceiling paint the woman would need to use to cover it up. Once the room was as protected as it was going to be, Dean climbed up on one of the beds and crawled under the covers. He was out the moment his head hit the pillow. Sam sat watching his brother sleep. It had been a long, strange day. He wondered what tomorrow would bring. The pain was terrible and all-consuming. Dean was strapped down tightly as his skin was cut and peeled away. Then salt was poured on his wounds and roughly rubbed into them. He'd scream in agony if he could, but his throat was raw and any noise he made hurt as badly as the fresh cuts being made on his stomach. Then the demon's hands pulled the two sides of the slice further from each other, effectively opening Dean up. If he weren't already in hell, that probably would have killed him. Dean felt the demon plunge its hand into his body and begin to pull out his internal organs. The torture was made worse by the knowledge that when it was all over, Dean's body would once again be made whole and his torment would begin all over again. But between torture sessions, he'd be asked that question. The one he always answered no to. Some days he wasn't even sure why he said no anymore. He knew he couldn't go on this way indefinitely, but he also knew there was no way out of here. He now faced eternal torment in hell. Unless, of course, he gave in and said yes. Got off the rack and became a torturer instead of the tortured. But no. He couldn't do that, could he? Then the demon stabbed the knife deep into Dean's eye, destroying it and slicing into the bone of the socket. Dean found his voice then and let out a scream. Ugh. Dean sat up as the cry left his mouth. Somehow he'd come free of his bindings. He didn't hesitate to jump off of the rack and try to escape. It was dark and he fell to the ground. His body no longer hurt, but it felt wrong somehow. That didn't matter though. He had to run. Dean got to his feet and was about to take off when a light came on. It was bright and sudden. Dean covered his eyes, wondering what form of new torture he was about to endure. Then large arms grabbed him from behind. Whatever demon this was, it was incredibly huge. No. Let go of me, you son of a bitch. Dean yelled as he kicked backwards at it and tried to pull free. Dean! Dean, you have to calm down. The voice sounded like Sam, but Sam wasn't down here. Besides, Sam was taller than him, but not by this much. It had to be some kind of demon trick. So Dean did the only thing he could think to do with his arms pinned and his legs useless. He bit the demon bastard's arm. Oh crap. Damn it, Dean. That hurts. Dean tasted blood. But the demons down here didn't bleed. But that must mean, Sammy? Dean went still. The arm holding him in place loosened and he was turned around. Dean looked up to see his brother looking down at him, his expression a mixture of pain and worry. But why was Sam so big? And then it came back to him. Sam wasn't any bigger than normal. It was Dean that was small. He wasn't in hell, he was just stuck as a 4-year-old kid. Close enough. When Dean had gotten his breathing back under control, he offered Sam a weak smile. Sorry about that. Thought you were someone else. I'm glad I'm not whoever you thought I was. Sam commented as he looked down at the deep teeth marks in his arm. Or you may have eaten my whole arm off. No way, dude. You don't taste very good. Dean pulled away from Sam's arms. You want to tell me what that was all about? Sam asked. Not really. You have a nightmare? No, I was dreaming about supermodels. Dean, what? You freaked out, jumped out of bed, and tried to make a run for it. You didn't even know where you were or who I was. Thanks for the recap, Sam. I had completely forgotten about what happened in the last few minutes. I'm being serious, Dean. That is not a good sign. That indicates that you were having a flashback. What was it about? Just drop it. Was it hell? I said drop it. Dean was feeling overwhelmed, but there was no way that he was going to cry in front of Sam again. Dean, Sam was talking too gently, as if addressing a terrified child. Dean was not some terrified child. He was an adult who just happened to be a little on the small side at the moment, and he wished Sam would treat him that way. I think you're experiencing the emotions of a 4-year-old. And I think you know that. And as a 4-year-old, you can't just keep repressing stuff like this. It's going to be too much for you. Thank you for your assessment, Dr. Phil. Now shut the hell up. Dean started walking towards the door, planning on getting in the Impala and going for a long ride, when he remembered his predicament. He wanted to kick something in frustration, but that would just prove the whole emotions of a 4-year-old thing. So instead Dean turned and walked into the bathroom, slamming the door behind him. Once he made sure the door was locked so that Sam wouldn't be tempted to follow him inside, Dean sat on the floor and leaned his head against the wall. This sucked. He hated being stuck this way, and now it was making his hell memories so much worse. He could feel his body still trembling and had to fight the tears that were trying their damnedest to escape. This damned for-year-old body, with its damned for-year-old emotions, was making all the work he'd done to compartmentalize those 40 years in hell dissolve. Dean rubbed his hands over his face, trying to get a grip. And now not only did he have to deal with all of this crap, but Sam had found out about it. The brother he was supposed to protect now knew how incredibly weak he'd become. That thought did not help his losing battle against his emotions. Just as he felt the first few tears slide down his cheeks, Dean saw a spider skitter across the bathroom floor. Tears turned to anger and the boy got to his feet and ran at the 8-legged pest. Not caring that his feet were bare and he could easily get bitten, Dean stomped the tiny spider over and over until it was just a dark smear on the tiled floor. Satisfied that the thing had been taken care of, Dean wiped the bottom of his foot off with a piece of toilet paper and then left the bathroom. Sam had gone back to bed, but Dean could tell that his brother wasn't sleeping. Without a word, the boy climbed up into his own bed and spent the next hour and a half staring at the ceiling, hoping to stay awake the rest of the night to avoid any more dreams. But his little body's need for rest finally won out and he fell into a restless sleep filled with the memories of pain and torment. The next morning, Sam was wise enough to not mention anything from the night before. Their breakfast consisted of packages of mini donuts and cans of soda that Sam had gotten from the vending machine outside. When they were done, Dean got dressed in a clean pair of jeans and his black nothing but trouble t-shirt. Next he pulled on socks and shoes. After putting on his red overshirt and rolling up the sleeves, the boy went into the bathroom to comb his hair and brush his teeth. He went through his travel bag and pulled out his comb, toothbrush, and toothpaste, grimacing when he saw his razor. No shaving needed today. The toothbrush turned out to be too big for his mouth and was very uncomfortable to use, but Dean wasn't going to mention it to Sam. He'd be damned if he was going to get a little kid toothbrush decorated with cartoon characters. When he was done, he relieved himself and then left the bathroom. Okay, dude. Let's south hit the road. Once in the car, Dean pulled out the lollipop he'd been given the night before, took off the wrapper and shoved it into his mouth. Sam glanced back at him. You know that it's not safe to eat that in the car, right? You could choke on it. You know that it's not safe to try and stop me from eating it, right? I could choke you. Dean replied. Sam chuckled and shook his head. Dean watched as the scenery flew by. He wanted to get to Bobby's and get some answers. Hopefully they'd be the answers that he wanted. If Bobby couldn't find a way to fix this, he'd be screwed. He'd be stuck being helpless and useless. Nothing but a burden on his brother. His rather depressing thoughts were interrupted by Sam. Hey Dean, you hungry? Starving? Good, cause we just stopped to eat. With a start, Dean realized that the car was already parked and he had been so lost in thought that he hadn't even noticed. The boy unfastened his seat belt, pushed open the door, and hopped out of the Impala. It was a bit of a drop and he almost ended up face first on the pavement. After regaining his balance, Dean looked up to see that they were parked outside a McDonald's. You gotta be kidding me, it's south the only place to eat for miles. Besides, it's not like we don't eat at these places all the time. Dean knew that that was true, but in his current condition a place designed for children just pissed him off. But he was hungry and he knew that Sam was too, so he swallowed his pride and started towards the brightly colored fast food restaurant. He only got a few steps before Sam reached down and grabbed his hand. Dean made a face, but didn't try to pull away. Once inside, Dean studied the menu. It took only a moment to decide what he wanted. Dude, get me the bacon Angus burger meal. Dean, that's a third-pound burger. So, there's no way you're gonna be able to eat all that. You probably couldn't even fit enough of it into your mouth to take a bite. Can I take your order? An older man asked from behind the counter. Yeah. Sam responded. I'll have a grilled chicken sandwich, a medium drink, and a cheeseburger Happy Meal, please. Dean was about to protest when Sam continued. And is there any way I could get some bacon on that burger? The employee looked down at Dean, who shot him a pleading look. Sure, no problem, thank you. Sam replied, handing over the money for their food. Within minutes they were sitting in a booth, unwrapping their lunches. Dean opened the red and yellow box and pulled out his cheeseburger and fries. In the box there was also a package of apple slices and a Hot Wheels car. Dean pocketed the car just in case he ever found a use for it, but left the healthy snack behind. Then he dug into the sandwich. The boy managed to finish the burger and most of his fries before realizing that Sam had been right. He was stuffed. He threw the remaining fries into the Happy Meal box with the rest of his trash and put the box onto the tray. Sam got up and threw everything away. "I gotta use the bathroom before we go," Dean announced to his brother. "Sure, let us go." Dean was relieved that Sam was going too. After his encounter the day before, he was a little reluctant to use public restrooms alone. Once he'd done his business, the Winchesters headed for the exit. On the way out, Sam stopped and pointed to the bench near the front counter. On it sat a statue of Ronald McDonald. "Hey Dean, you want to go sit in Ronald's lap? I can take your picture," Sam teased. "Bite me." Dean shot back. They heard a grunt of disapproval from an old woman waiting in line. "You shouldn't say things like that, Dean," Sam scolded, obviously uncomfortable with the way the woman and others in the restaurant were looking at them. Dean put on his most innocent expression and replied loudly enough for everyone to hear. "But Daddy, you say it all the time." Sam grabbed his arm and pulled him out of the building. As soon as they hit the parking lot, Dean burst out laughing. "You think you're funny, don't you? Dude, I'm hilarious." Sam opened the back door of the car and Dean climbed in. "I'll get you back. What are you talking about?" That comment was just payback for wanting me to sit in Sleazy the Clown's lap. "I say we're even." Sam closed Dean's door and then got in the driver's seat. "Whatever, Dean." Dean leaned back in the seat and grinned. That had been fun. He was still basking in his success at embarrassing his brother when he heard Sam swear. "What's wrong?" The car behind us had been parked next to our car at McDonald's and I think they're following us. "Demons? That'd be my guess. Can you lose them?" "I can try." "Hold on." The car swerved as Sam took a sharp turn. Dean fell to his right and hit his shoulder into the door. It was then that he realized that he'd forgotten to belt himself in. Dean reached to his left, grabbed the seatbelt and was just beginning to pull it over his lap when the other car rammed into the Impala. Sam groaned in ache and attempted desperately no longer to black out. His forehead had hit the steering wheel and he felt a skinny move of blood leaking down the left facet of his face. However, he couldn't permit the pinnacle wound to get the higher of him. The Impala were rammed from behind, after being accompanied, and Sam knew that whoever had achieved it become likely after Dean. If he misplaced cognizance now, his brother might be long past or useless by the time he woke lower back up. That changed into not something that he ought to let happen. With the thought of Dean, Sam turned his head to test on his brother handiest to locate that the back seat become empty. No. How may want to they are becoming to Dean already? Sam changed into about to get out of the car to look around while something on the ground of the Impala caught his eye. It became the booster seat. And it was mendacity at the frame of a small infant. "Dean!" Sam launched his seatbelt and turned round absolutely, kneeling at the seat to get a better view of the back. His brother was lying crumpled on his facet facing away from Sam, his right arm pinned below his frame at an strange attitude. Sam reached down and took the booster seat off of Dean to get a higher appearance. He breathed a sigh of relief while he saw that the boy become nevertheless respiration. He desired to roll him over to see his face, however failed to want to cause any in addition harm. Sam must get into the lower back to get a higher appearance. Sam desired to kick himself. There was simplest one manner his brother ought to have ended up in this role. Dean hadn't been sporting his seatbelt. Sam had permitted him into the auto, then closed the door and drove off without double-checking. Dean and him had both been so busy teasing each different and ridicule arguing that neither of them had paid any interest to the child's safety. But the element that virtually annoyed Sam became that Dean might have checked if the jobs have been reversed. Dean usually took care of Sam and made certain that he turned into protected. Dean had raised him and kept him as secure as viable for 26 years and Sam had failed his brother after just over 24 hours. However, Sam simply wasn't used to being the large brother. Sure, he watched Dean's lower back over time at the same time as searching together, however he never had to fear about shopping for his brother, making sure he slept and ate successfully, and he absolutely by no means had to test to see if Dean turned into wearing a seatbelt. The huge brother responsibilities that got here so without difficulty to Dean had been overseas to Sam, but he ought to analyze Speedy. He needed to care for his brother till they could opposite his condition, and if it couldn't be reversed then Sam became in it for the long haul. Sam heard a car door slam and knew he had extra immediately troubles. Pulling out the demon-killing knife, Sam opened the front door and were given out. A person and a lady have been drawing near him, their eyes as black as night. Sam held the knife out in front of himself, equipped to assault them once they have been near sufficient. The female eyed him warily. Sam changed into inclined to bet that they figured the hunter might be unconscious and Dean would be theirs for the taking. "Hand your brother over," the male demon ordered. "Not going to occur. Then we will need to take him by force. We our orders. Dean Winchester will die. Cross again to Lucifer and tell him to forget it. Dean's now not going to die and I might not ever say yes." Both demons stepped nearer. "I guess your corpses will have to send the message then." The man laughed. "Kill us and extra will come when you. Now that we determined you Winchesters, you'll locate that our kind is not smooth to shake. You found us each instances through good fortune." Sam shrugged. "What, you guys are sitting round rest regions and speedy food joints inside the hopes of stumbling into us?" The extremely responsible look at the girl's face confirmed his theory. "It does not count how we located you," the male demon insisted. "What matters is that we did and you're now at our mercy." Wow. Simply be satisfied that Dean's now not status right here, due to the fact he mock your dumb cliches for sure. Sam knowledgeable him. Without every other word, Sam ran at his attackers, hoping to catch them off protect. The man raised his hand, equipped to throw Sam to the side, but it became too overdue. The knife was buried in his throat before he may want to act. Sam pulled it out and turned to do the identical to the girl. But she changed into manifestly the smart one, due to the fact she'd gotten lower back in her automobile and changed into backing away. That turned into exceptional with Sam. Every second he wasted on them became another moment he wasn't together with his brother. He saved an eye fixed on the Impala to ensure that no person had attempted to sneak in, but now not understanding the extent of Dean's situation turned into driving him insane. Sam opened the return door and peered interior. Dean hadn't moved in any respect, however he turned into none the less respiratory and his breaths didn't appear labored. Sam leaned toward his brother. Dean's right arm was manifestly dislocated at the shoulder, however the rest of his frame failed to look like in bad situation. Sam knew there has been a risk of internal bleeding or spinal harm and that shifting him could reason greater harm, however he didn't have a choice. Dean had no ID for himself at this age, so a trip to the sanatorium became out of the query. Sam couldn't hazard toddler offerings getting worried. Very carefully, the older Winchester positioned his palms across the boy, gently cradling his frame, and lifted him up. Then he positioned Dean on the lower back seat. Dean's nose changed into bleeding and the right aspect of the little hunter's face became covered in bruises. A top below the shirt revealed extra contusions. But there has been no signal of any broken bones. Sam breathed a sigh of relief. It is able to been so much worse. He knew that he need to reset his brother's arm immediately, which would probably be exceptional to do at the same time as he became unconscious anyway. Sam held the tiny arm in his hand, positioned his other hand on Dean's shoulder and jerked the limb returned into region. "Arth!" Dean's eyes flew open as he screeched in suffering. "Dean, it is okay. You're okay. I simply needed to repair your arm, but you'll be first class. Attempt now not to transport." "Sammy? I'm here, Dean. I am right here. That kinda harm." Dean attempted to funny story, tears of ache strolling down his face. "I'm positive it did. You are bleeding. You want me to test it?" Sam had completely forgotten about his head wound. "Don't worry, approximately it. It's now not that awful." "You sure?" "Yeah. How are you feeling?" Dean shrugged his accurate shoulder. "Arm hurts like a complaint, however I'll stay." That sounds so wrong coming out of a 12 months old's mouth. Sam commented. You know what D sound even worse? Dean requested with a grin. I don't need to pay attention it. Killjoy. He muttered. Sobering, Dean regarded round. So what took place? The automobile behind us became being driven by demons. They rear-ended us. I ganked one in every of them, however the other escaped. Is the Impala K? I failed to check. Sam admitted, knowing that Dean become going to head nuclear. He was right. Dean sat up and tried to get out of the auto. Allow me out, Sam. I gotta take a look at on her. Now not trying to hurt Dean any further by way of trying to stop him, Sam sponsored up and permit the boy hop out. Sam observed his brother to the again of the vehicle. The damage become minimal, a crunched up bumper and a busted tail light. However, Dean looked afflicted. Oh baby, what did they do to you? Dean, it will likely be excellent. Bobby can repair it up whilst we get to his region, but we gotta get transferring before all of us else suggests up. This is why she likes me more than you. Dean pointed out but walked to the lower back door. Sam opened the trunk and pulled out a primary aid package. Then he went over to Dean. I'm going to get this flannel blouse off of you. It is a touch tight in the top arm and that I do not need there to be any problems with swelling. His brother nodded and allowed Sam to slide the blouse off. Then Sam used some bandages to construct a makeshift sling. As soon as the arm changed into immobilized, Sam positioned the booster seat in location at the left aspect of the seat so the belt would not touch Dean's injured shoulder. Subsequent, he picked his brother up and put him within the automobile seat. Dean grumbled a touch, however they both knew he'd have had trouble mountain climbing in on his personal. Sam wet a chunk of gauze with a few bottled water and used it to softly wash the blood off the boy's face. As soon as the seatbelt became secured, Sam wasn't making that mistake 2 times. Sam closed the again door and were given into the driver's seat. Then they had been back on the street. Supernatural, 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 supernatural. Dean sat inside the back seat trying no longer to cry out in pain on every occasion the Impala went over a bump, hit a pothole, or took a specifically sharp turn. His shoulder changed into killing him, but he positive as hell wasn't going to complain to Sam. It turned into his very own rattling fault for forgetting to place on his seatbelt in the first place. For this sort of bonehead flow, he deserved a little ache. However, the pain he become extra than just a little. It regarded like this baby-sized body came with a low threshold for pain. Extremely good. Dean reached into the bag of chocolate-protected pretzels and tossed one into his mouth. He desired the peanut M&Ms, but Sam had known as them a choking chance or some such crap. Oh, well. The pretzels would do for now. It become almost nighttime and that they hadn't stopped to consume considering McDonald's. The last aspect they wished was to encounter greater fuglies. Besides, they had be at Bobby's soon. But he turned into certainly hungry, and so Sam had presented him the sweet chewing the chocolate deal with. Dean appeared out the window on the now familiar landscape. They had been nearly there. He felt a hurry of excitement. Bobby might be able to restore this, after which lifestyles could get lower back to normal. He would not be continuously drowning in feelings, he'd be capable of get lower back to looking, he'd be capable of pressure, and Sam would not have to take care of him anymore. He watched as his brother looked within the rear view reflect for the millionth time with that pathetic expression on his face. Dean knew that look. It meant that Sam became feeling bad for Dean and was worried about him. But that just wasn't right. Dean changed into the older brother and disturbing become his process. Dean took care of Sammy. That became just how the universe became supposed to paintings. Before he could get any more depressed than he currently become, the automobile began to slow down. That they had arrived at Singer Salvage. Sam had slightly parked whilst Dean undid his belt and pushed open the door. As quickly as his Spider-Man sneakers hit the gravel, red lighting flashing with the effect, Dean was strolling quick closer to the residence. He desired to break into a run, however children ran into their pals' houses and Dean was now not a kid. Sam caught up with him and the two brothers went as much as the door and let themselves in. "Bobby, we're here," Sam called. "In right here." The older hunter answered. Dean led the manor into Bobby's look at. Bobby sat in his wheelchair on the table with books and papers spread out in front of him, obviously hard at work. Dean just hoped that every one that work changed into going to repay. Bobby sat in his chair and turned yet another page in yet another book that wasn't giving him the answers he needed. He knew the boys would be showing up soon and had really wanted to have a little more to give them when they arrived. He even left a message on Castiel's phone saying that there was a problem with Dean and that they might need help, but he hadn't gotten a response. Bobby knew that since the angel was currently cut off from much of Heaven's power, he would likely not be able to fix Dean. Hell, the guy couldn't even heal Bobby. Nope. Not going there again. Bobby kept a strict rule not to sulk about his condition more than 50 times an hour, and he'd already surpassed that amount. And damn it, but there his mind went, wandering again. He had to focus. Dean was counting on him. And speaking of the Winchesters, Bobby heard the familiar rumble of the Impala, followed by first one and then another car door open and shut. He took a deep breath and tried, for the millionth time, to imagine how exactly Dean was going to look. He hadn't seen the older Winchester until the boy was about 6.5 years old, so he was curious. Of course, according to Sam's second phone call, Dean had still retained all of his memories, so he wouldn't really be a 4-year-old. Too bad. Bobby sometimes wished he could go back in time and somehow give that boy a real childhood. How Dean had been raised was the topic of much arguing, threats, and on one occasion an actual fist fight between John Winchester and himself. His front door opened and he heard Sam call out his name. "In here!" He hollered back, knowing they'd know where to look. Where the hell else would he be? The first brother he saw was Sam. That boy was impossible to miss with his exceptional height. He once asked Dean how much damned miracle grow he slipped into his little brother's food while he was growing up to get Sam that tall. Then Bobby dropped his line of sight down to Dean. And damn it all if it wasn't one of the cutest sights ever. The boy stood there with messy blonde hair, wearing jeans, and a black t-shirt with the words "Nothing but Trouble" in large white letters across the chest, and his tiny little sneaker were flashing red lights. The only thing that was out of place was the dark bruises on the right side of the boy's face and the makeshift sling that held his arm in place. Bobby looked back up at Sam and saw that the now older brother had a lump and a small cut on his forehead. "And what the hell happened to you?" "Hi to you too, Bobby," Dean muttered. And damn, but sarcasm should not ever be heard from such a childish voice. The little boy crossed the room and climbed up into one of the chairs across from Bobby. "So what you got for us?" "Hi to you too, Dean," Bobby shot back. Dean rolled his eyes. "We ran into more demons." Sam answered his earlier question. "Technically, they ran into us," Dean corrected. He turned to Bobby. "They rear-ended my car. We gotta go out in the morning and take a look at her. You boys okay?" Bobby inquired, ignoring Dean's obsession with the Impala. "We'll be fine," Sam informed him. "So long as we stay away from any more of them." Bobby remembered his phone conversation from yesterday. First the attack at Walmart and now this. "You think they're gonna keep gunning for Dean? He's an easy target right now. Dude, I'm sitting right here." Dean was clearly annoyed. "Your brother's right, Dean, whatever. Look, have you found a way to fix this?" And there it was. The question that Bobby had been dreading. No. With that one word, Dean's whole face fell. The boy looked for a moment like he was going to cry, and just what the hell was that about? Dean Winchester didn't cry. Hell, the boy was so emotionally constipated that even upcoming apocalypses couldn't get him to crack. At least not in front of people. Bobby knew that Dean tried to keep up his hard-ass appearance around others, and that if he was going to fall apart, he'd do it in private. But here he was, tearing up from some bad news. Bobby didn't know what was going on, but he sure as hell wasn't going to upset the poor boy any further. "But I will. Look, some of the older lore does mention the Edicop Scapning using magic as a defense to turn its attackers into children. It wasn't magic, Bobby. It was some sort of venom that it spit on Dean." Sam informed him. "I know that, you idiot. But I did say this was old lore. Back then they thought Tarkina crap was the result of magic." Dean snickered at that, and Bobby was pleased to see that the kid had gotten a hold of his emotions once more. But the end result is the same. The attacker becomes a child and then the spider's next meal. But there is some room for hope. One story tells of the inflicted person escaping. They remained a child until they visited a local witch doctor who fixed them, so it can be reversed? Dean was looking at him with hope in his eyes. Looks it. Now I'm figuring that witch doctor whipped up some sorta antidote. I'm gonna keep looking and calling my sources, see if I can't find out what it was. Thanks, Bobby. Dean smiled at him. Looking at the boy, Bobby had a hard time believing that this was really Dean Winchester. He was too small. Too cute. Too innocent looking. Dude, I gotta go take a pee. Gigantia over here wouldn't he stop to let me do my business? Freaking Nazi. Nope, he was definitely still Dean. Bobby watched Dean leave the room, shoes blinking red with every step, and then turned to Sam. What is wrong with your brother? Sam looked confused. You know what happened, Bobby. Yeah, but if I didn't know any better I'd say that Dean was about to start bawling like an actual 4-year-old when I told him I didn't know how to fix him. Yeah, about that last night he had a nightmare. About hell, not unusual for him, no, but his reaction was. He went into full flashback mode and bit me when I tried to calm him down. Once he was out of it, I thought he was going to start crying, but then he insisted that he was fine and locked himself in the bathroom. When he finally went back to bed, I could hear him whimpering in his sleep. That combined with the fact that he cried for nearly half an hour after the Walmart demon incident leads me to believe that he is suffering from the emotional state of a 4-year-old as well as the obvious physical changes. Why think? He was in the room for only minutes and I could have told why that. Bobby shook his head. While Dean refused to show weakness, Sam often refused to see it in his brother because if Dean was okay then all was right with the world. Idiots, the both of them. What do we do about it? We treat him like he is Dean. If we put on the kid gloves, it's just gonna piss him off. But we gotta keep a closer eye on him and try not to upset those kiddie emotions he's got. Bobby felt bad for Dean. The crap he'd been through was too much even for an adult to handle, but how the hell was a 4-year-old supposed to cope with all of that? Sam nodded. Sounds like a plan. Well, it's nice that it meets your standards. Bobby's words were laced with sarcasm but no malice. Just then Dean poked his head into the room. Dude, I'm gonna raid the fridge. Anybody want a drink? Beer. Bobby placed his order. Make that 2. Sam added, K, and just 2. Bobby instructed. You stick to the sodas. I ain't gonna haul your tiny ass to the hospital for alcohol poisoning. You got it. I'm not an idiot. Bobby, could have fooled me sometimes. That's just cause you're too easy to fool, old man. And with that the boy was gone. Bobby shook his head as he got back to research. These were going to be interesting days. Supernatural, 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 supernatural. Dean opened the door to the upstairs guest room, trudged inside, and dropped his bag by the door. He was exhausted. He was pretty sure that he'd pushed his little body way further than it was meant to go. He'd tried to stay up longer to help with the research, but there was just no way that he could remained upright any longer. The small hunter climbed up onto the bed, shoved the pocket knife that Sam had given to him under the pillow for safety, and kicked his shoes off. The barely audible thumps they made as they hit the floor were nowhere near the loud thuds that he was used to his boots making. Just another thing that wasn't right. Speaking of things not being right, Dean knew that Sam had told Bobby about his emotional state while he was out of the room. He couldn't help but to feel embarrassed that now the older hunter knew how weak he currently was. He wondered if Sam or Bobby would ever look at him the same way again. Trying to keep his mind off of depressing thoughts, Dean concentrated on what Bobby had informed him of. There was a cure for Dean's condition. They just needed to figure out what it was. And Bobby always came through for them. This wasn't going to be permanent after all. Dean smiled and closed his eyes, deciding to give his body what it needed. But as soon as the dark room disappeared, other images took its place. Images of pain and torture and torment. Dean's eyes snapped open and he sat up. No. No way could he go through another night like that. But he needed rest. But he didn't want the nightmares. Well, this just sucked out loud. Music. Maybe if he listened to some Metallica he'd feel better. Dean hopped out of bed and walked over to his bag. He rummaged through it and pulled out his cassette player and headphones. Sammy kept insisting that he should give in and get an iPod, and Dean would as soon as hell froze over and Lucifer began giving ice skating lessons to angels. Dean climbed back up on the bed and slipped the headphones on. Then he turned on the cassette player and cranked the volume up. He was in the middle of the fourth song when he started to drift off. At first he welcomed the darkness, but then he felt the hooks pierce his skin and with a muted cry he jolted back up. Dean sat in the bed, his heart beating way too fast and his breathing ragged. He waited and was relieved when neither Sam nor Bobby came in to check on him. He must have been quiet enough. But he had to admit that part of him wished he wasn't alone. Damn it! He hated this so much. It wasn't fair. Not at all. Dean felt tears coming to his eyes once more, and here alone in the dark he could finally let them out. Dean flopped down on his stomach and buried his face in the pillow to muffle the sounds as he gave in and let his tiny body shake with the force of his sobs. Dean had no clue as to how long he lay there crying, but as the emotions began to die down, the boy became aware of that feeling he always got when someone was watching him. Great! He thought. Now Sammy knows what a mess I am. But then he heard Sam's voice, and it was coming from downstairs as he was asking Bobby if he had a particular book. Dean sat up in the bed, grabbed his knife, and turned to face the shadowy figure that stood in the dark room with the small child. Dean held the pocket knife out in front of himself, wishing he had more than a tiny blade for protection in opposition to the chance that now stood in his room. However, he'd killed a long way worse with a long way much less. The determined reached a hand up to the facet and Dean braced himself for something attack changed into to come back. There was a click on after which the lighting flicked on. Not awaiting it, the surprising brightness left Dean blinking to clear his imaginative and prescient. The discern stepped nearer and the little hunter became approximately to shout to Sam for help, after which bounce anything fugly turned into drawing near the bed whilst his eyesight back to working order. Rattling all of it, Cass. What the hell? You looking to get stabbed? Dean? Is that actually you? Oh, yeah. The complete age issue. Path, it's me, Cass. You're the angel, shouldn't you be able to tell? Sure. It is just that your look is disconcerting. You already know what else is disconcerting? Someone creeping around my darkish room inside the midnight looking to scare the crap out of me. Dean hissed at him, trying his pleasant to hold his voice down so as no longer to alert Sam or Bobby. It wasn't my aim to scare you, Dean. Yeah, I recognize. But subsequent time just say hi, Dean, it is Cass or it is me. I am not some demon here to kill you or even I are available peace, all right? Cass nodded his head. I will announce my presence higher subsequent time. Cool. Now that this is taken care of, what are you doing right here? Bobby called. He informed you approximately this? No. He left a message that stated you had a bit problem. Dean rolled his eyes. Did he use the one's phrases? A little problem? Sure. And I now see that it became and strive at humor. A pathetic one. Dean commented. So that you were given the message and got here right over? No, I was following up a lead someplace else and become going to return when I finished, but then I got phrase that the alternative angels had redoubled their efforts to find you. It appears phrase has gotten out that you are currently susceptible. They understand about this? No, they're best conscious that the demons have deemed you to be helpless in the meanwhile. Well, there is going my rep. How did this show up? Cass moved in the direction of the bed, invading Dean's private area as normal. Dean didn't point out it because having the angel round turned into making him experience a bit better. Some spider thing puked on me. The Edicop scapning. You recognize those freaks? I have in no way encountered one, no, but they are a very antique species. Do you already know how to fix me? Dean inquired. No. If I had my complete powers, I could do it with but a concept. As it's Miles, there is nothing I can do. Bobby thinks there is an antidote. It appears in all likelihood. Cass stared at Dean, making the boy feel slightly uncomfortable. Dude, take a photo. It's going to final longer. Excuse me? You are staring. Sorry, it's far just you make an incredibly lovable toddler. Okay, Cass, you know it's no longer perfect for a man to reveal up in a kid's room inside the midnight and say such things as that, proper? Cass tilted his head. It changed into a compliment, Dean. Cass, guys do not like different men calling them lovely. Understood. Cass answered, despite the fact that Dean had a hunch that he become just giving in to transport the communication along. And that became simply fine with Dean. So, I take it the others don't know you're here. No. I seen simply outdoor the room they are in, and upon noticing your absence, I got here looking for you. Properly, you must probable pass let them recognize you're striking round earlier than they pay attention a person up right here with me and try to kill you. Such as you had been going to? Exactly. Will you be very well? The angel asked him. Certain. I'll simply get back to drowsing like I was doing earlier than you tried to satisfy the sharp end of my knife. Cass regarded stressed. However, Dean, you have been now not drowsing once I entered the room. You were crying. Dean's face went red with embarrassment. No, I wasn't. The angel tilted his head to the aspect. You needn't feel embarrassed. I have witnessed many humans cry over far much less than what you have been through. I do not cry, Cass. Possibly in case you cried more you would not be so disillusioned all the time. Dude, just drop it. Is it the nightmares? I said drop. Wait, how do you already know about that? Cass looked at Dean like he turned into extraordinarily gradual. I pulled you from hell, Dean. You need to actually dream of that, in particular now while your emotional state is compromised. There was a short second of silence. The Dean admitted in almost a whisper. Yeah, it is the nightmares. His buddy sat down at the mattress next to him. I take into account that you do not want to seem susceptible in the front of your brother or Bobby. They rely upon you and also you don't need to allow them to down. However, you are now not vulnerable, Dean. And you may communicate to me. Dean bit his lip, feeling his eyes filling with tears. And there went the one's damned waterworks once more. Look, Cass, it is just that I do not want help, you recognize. I can take care of this. I recognize you can. However, to your current nation it'll cause you damage to accomplish that. You cannot maintain those emotions in without ultimately breaking, and then what assist will you be for your pals? So what were you announcing? That I should simply cry for your shoulder? What I am saying, Dean, is which you have been there for me, not goodbye in the past whilst no person else became, and also I'm right here for you, and if you needed to act your modern day age round me for a second, I would slip into the position of a father or mother angel to consolation you and overlook all approximately it once you were properly restored. Dean had no clue as to how to respond to that. The grown-up part of his thoughts objected to the very concept, at the same time as his childish aspect desired him to move slowly into the angel's lap and doze off. He settled for a comfy spot in the middle. Thanks, Cass. They both sat there for a second before Dean motioned towards his pillow. I definitely do gotta get some shut-eye. Lie back and I can assist you. Dude, if you begin singing me lullabies, I will kick your ass. That became no longer my plan. I'm able to put you right into a dreamless sleep. It'll most effective remaining a few hours before your subconscious takes a preserve and you may yet again enjoy nightmares. However, I accept as true with it is better than not anything. And I could be right here while you awaken. Dean felt his lips pull up into a grin. Cass, that is the satisfactory provide I have gotten in a while. And with that, the boy leaned back to relaxation, his head at the pillow, and closed his eyes. Good night, Dean, he heard Cass say. Then he felt fingers pressed towards his brow, after which there was not anything. Supernatural, 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 supernatural. Castiel sat watching Dean sleep for a while. He ought to rarely consider that that small baby changed into without a doubt the same guy he had fought aspect by way of side with. That turned into now, not to mention that he could not tell that this became Dean. The bravery, energy, wit, and stubbornness were all nevertheless present now, not to mention his colorful manner of speaking. Castiel knew that the angels and demons that now notion the hunter to be helpless were in for a surprise, but he also feared for Dean. Now not only did he have to cope with enemies from all aspects, however his very own thoughts were seeking to ruin him. Dean was fighting towards his own frame, unwilling to give the 4-year-old component of himself what changed into wanted. And there was no 4YR vintage in the world who needed to contend with the memories that the hunter possessed. Castiel prayed that the boy would be restored quickly. Before the burden of what he carried overwhelmed his childlike mind, Castiel vowed to do the whole thing in his strength to assist the hunter through this alternatively unusual ordeal. Dean Winchester could not be misplaced, no longer after everything Castiel had given as much as follow him. The angel knew that he was on the right course, even if it went towards all the others in heaven. God had introduced him return so that he ought to preserve in his undertaking, and Dean became a totally essential part of that. Except, the man had grown to be a chum, possibly the best pal Castiel nonetheless had, and the exceptional manner to assist ensure that Dean made it via this experience intact became to make it as brief as viable. In keeping with the young hunter, his brother and friend have been already working on it. Castiel appeared down on the dozing infant. He'd be okay for some time longer, and in that time, the angel should help the others. A moment later, Castiel regarded in Bobby Singer's have a look at. What the hell? Bobby nearly dropped the beer he changed into preserving. Sam spun around to peer what all of the exhilaration changed into about. Hiya. Castiel greeted them. Took a lengthy sufficient tar show. Bobby growled out. Castiel selected to ignore the comment. He had discovered lengthy in the past that if he allowed himself to get concerned in each argument the Winchesters and Bobby attempted to begin, that he would spend all his time verbally sparring with them. I have facts. Zachariah is aware that Dean is vulnerable. I believe he plans on making a move quickly. Approximately what took place to Dean? Sam regarded harassed. Glaringly, Bobby had informed the more youthful hunter that he hadn't given the angel any details. Yes. I was just speak me with Dean. He became to Bobby. A bit warning on what I might find right here might be been beneficial. Didn't he understand how a great deal to say over the phone? You feared that myself or my mobile device might also have grown to be compromised. The idea crossed my thoughts. Castiel changed into slightly hurt that Bobby idea he might do something that would damage Dean, but he understood the man's protectiveness. You noticed Dean? Sam requested. How is he? He is sleeping. But I'm afraid that angels and demons are the least of his problems for the time being. Something else after him that we ought to recognize about? Bobby inquired. The pressure of his memories and fears are an excessive amount for his contemporary thoughts and frame. It's miles most effective a rely of time earlier than he breaks, and now not even restoring his body could fix his mind then. He has had some troubles. Sam admitted. He had absolutely awful nightmares and has even broke down and cried. I figured it turned into the emotions that got here with the age alternate that became doing it to him. It is. Castiel confirmed. Children lack the emotional maturity to cope with troubles. This is why they cry. It purges our bodies and renews them. Dean tries to act like an grown-up and is denying his body and mind what it needs. Not all children cry smooth even though. Bobby spoke up. I met Dean whilst he turned into 6 and he had an amazing deal with his emotions already. That may be actual, however he is now 4. Except, whilst you first met him he hadn't yet been to hell. What are we able to do for him? Sam requested. Find the antidote as soon as possible. Yeah, motive we were planning on dragging our asses before you spoke up, Bobby muttered. Castiel disregarded him again. And provide him any consolation he needs. Dean does not need us treating him like a toddler. Sam pointed out. It's miles no longer about what he needs, it is about what he desires. Do no longer push him to cry or take delivery of consolation, however do not fool yourselves into questioning that it is not something he needs. Sam nodded, looking concerned. Castiel knew that this changed into no longer a clean scenario for any of them. It was definitely quite awkward for himself as well. He became no longer an professional on human emotions and changed into seeking to instruct others on the way to proceed with a 12 months old. He prayed he changed into accurate with his assessment and wouldn't he come what may wind up making things even worse for Dean. Well, if we're accomplished with the hand-holding portion of this discussion, I think I may have some idea on wherein to search for a way to restore this mess. Bobby announced. You discovered something? Sam walked over to stand behind Bobby and regarded over his shoulder. Sure and no. I suppose I understand what LL fix him, but I should search for the exact text. Well, what do you any similarly communique was reduced off as a terrified scream rang out from upstairs. Dean wasn't he on the rack? You'd think that in hell getting off of the rack and away from the demon that consistently tortured you would be a good thing, but it just meant that they were getting creative. And creative in the pit was never a good thing. Wherever Dean was now, it was pitch black. He could feel dirt under his bare feet, but there were no walls anywhere within his reach. Dean was dressed in just a pair of jeans, but clothes didn't really matter in hell since they were usually torn to shreds within a matter of moments. He wondered how long he'd have to wait before whatever was going to happen happened. Then he heard something. A small skittering noise coming from in front of him. Dean tensed, but then some kind of bug ran across his foot. He let out a small laugh. He was in a place of never-ending torment and had gotten scared of a tiny bug. Then he stopped and thought for a moment. What was a bug doing in hell anyway? His answer came seconds later, and it wasn't one he liked. A huge mass of insects swarmed up over him, crawling on his skin, under his jeans, in his hair. Dean tried to swat them off of him, but for every bug that fell off, 10 more took its place. Then they started to bite. No, bite wasn't even the right word. They were chewing on his flesh, eating him alive. Dean let out a scream and they rushed into his mouth as others crawled into his ears and nose. Those ones began eating him from the inside. Dean needed to get them off of him and out of him. He started clawing at his skin, trying to knock them off of him and rip them out of his flesh. But more kept coming. He was pretty sure they'd eaten his eyes, but he couldn't see in here in the first place, so it didn't seem to matter that much. If he were alive, the insects would killed him by now, but as it was, he knew that he'd stay here until there was nothing left of him. Dean's legs gave out as most of his muscle had been eaten away and he fell to the dirt floor, and now there were even more on him. They crawled over him and inside of him, and he didn't want this to last any longer. Dean continued to scratch and claw at his own skin as he let out a gurgled cry of agony and fear. It came out much louder than he thought it would. And then someone was grabbing him. He tried to pull away and the person held on tighter. Dean, you must calm down. Dean stopped his struggles. He knew that voice. It was Cass. The angel had pulled him out of hell, and Dean must somehow ended up back there because here was Castile yet again rescuing him. Dean grabbed onto the angel as tight as he could. Cass, please get me out of here. Out of here? I don't remember how I got back in hell, Cass, but please save me. Dean didn't even care that he was begging. He couldn't go back. Tears ran down his face as he clung to the angel, dimly aware that Cass was much bigger than usual. You aren't in hell, Dean. This is Bobby's house. You were having a nightmare. Suddenly Dean heard a door open and the lights flicked on. Dean! Sam's voice called his name out in panic. Yes, all right. It was just a nightmare. No. Dean insisted. I wasn't dreaming. I couldn't been cause if it was just a dream, then why does it still hurt? You're in pain? Cass asked. Dean nodded. The angel's hands gripped his upper arms gently but firmly and moved him back. Dean looked up and saw Cass's eyes widen. Sam obviously saw the same thing. What is it? What's wrong? Dean looked down at his arms that were much too small to be his own, and memories of the past days returned to him. But the thing that really shocked him was the condition that his tiny arms were in. There were deep fingernail marks running from elbow to wrist, some oozing blood. Is that what hurts? Cass inquired. Oh God, Dean! Sam gasped as he reached the side of the bed. Dean nodded in response to Castile's question. Then he added. My chest hurts too. The angel pulled the boy's shirt off to reveal the same damage on his chest and belly. As if in a trance, Dean looked down at his fingernails. There was blood under them. He had torn himself apart while he'd been caught up in that nightmare. Dean bit his lip anxiously and realized that he was still crying. The very young hunter tried to calm himself down, but it seemed an impossible task. "Is everything all right up there?" Bobby's voice called. "Nightmare." Sam responded. Then he turned back to his brother. "I'm going to go get the first aid kit, okay, Dean?" Dean didn't trust his voice not to break and further embarrass himself, so he just nodded. Once Sam had left, Dean looked up at Cass. "I don't want to sleep anymore. You only slept a couple of hours." "It's not enough. Dude, I can't keep going through this. They are worse than ever now. It's because, the whole age thing." "I know. But I don't want to dream like that anymore. Then I will put you back to sleep and wake you after the first 2 hours before you begin to dream. Once you have woken, I will put you back under. It is far from perfect and not a permanent solution, but it will get you through this night, I guess." Dean was terrified of going back to sleep, but he knew that his body needed it. He felt the exhaustion beginning to smother him already, and with so many enemies looking to take advantage of his situation, he'd need to be as sharp as possible. Just then Sam re-entered the room holding Bobby's first aid kit. Dean sat through the process of having the fingernail marks cleaned out and ointment and bandages put on the deepest ones. When his brother was done, he stepped back. "Well, I'm not taking you out to any more stores. Between the bruises and the bandages, you look like a severely abused child, but I'm still more attractive than you. Keep telling yourself that. Hey, I can't help it if the chicks are into me more than you. Newsflash, Dean. You're 4 years old. You haven't even hit puberty yet." Dean shrugged. "Neither have you." Sam shook his head. "And to think that I was beginning to feel sorry for you. Well, you don't have to. I'm fine. Now just get your gargantuan butt in your own bed and let me get some shut-eye, okay? Are you going to be all right?" "He'll be fine," Cass assured him. "I will keep watch." Sam looked down at Dean with concern written all over his features. Dean wished that he'd just go back to the teasing banter of moments before. It killed him a little to see his baby brother worrying over him. Dean should be the protector, not Sam. But obviously Dean had screwed up that job and now he was unable to protect Sammy, but the least he could do was try to be as light a burden as possible. "Seriously, Sammy, I'm good. Go. Sleep, if you're sure." Sam leaned over and hugged Dean. The boy squirmed a little in the embrace. Then his brother let go and left the room, with one last goodnight thrown over his shoulder on the way out the door. "Are you ready?" Cass asked. Dean made himself comfortable in the nest of pillows and blankets on the bed. Then he swallowed his fears and nodded. Cass reached forward and laid his fingers once more on the child's head and Dean was back asleep. Supernatural, 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 supernatural. The next morning, Bobby woke to the smells of coffee, bacon, and eggs. That was one good thing about having the Winchesters stay with him sometimes. If he woke up late, breakfast was always waiting for him. Of course, had he not stayed up most of the night researching for the boys, then it was likely that he wouldn't have slept so long. Either way, he was going to enjoy the meal before he brought up what he'd learned last night to the boys. It was a good news, bad news kind of a deal and he wasn't sure how they'd take it. And the last thing he wanted to do was to upset Dean even further. The kid really needed a break. Bobby rolled his damned wheelchair into the kitchen, expecting to see Sam standing at the stove. But that was not the case. "What the hell do you think you're doing, Dean?" Dean spun around on the makeshift stepstool of piled books and fell to the floor, dropping the frying pan that he'd been clutching in his small hand. There was a loud thud and a clatter, followed by a cry of pain. The boy sat on the flood amongst the now scattered books glaring up at Bobby. "Dude, what the hell? Are you trying to kill me? Or did you just feel like ruining breakfast?" Dean got to his feet and picked up the pan that had miraculously landed in such a way that the eggs had not spilled out all over the kitchen floor. "What were you doing using the stove? Cooking?" "That's what stoves are for. 4-year-olds don't cook, Dean." "Then it's a good thing that I'm not actually a 4-year-old. "Yeah, you are. And why could have burned yourself or fallen and split your thick skull open. I was doing just fine till you tried to give me a heart attack. What's going on? Sam rushed into the room. Bobby is upset that your brother was cooking. Bobby turned his head to see that Castile had been standing there the whole time. And why didn't you stop him? Bobby growled at the angel. Dean was certain that he could make breakfast without any problems. See? Cass trusts me. It's not about trust, boy. It's about me not wanting you getting hurt. Dude, I've been cooking for Sammy since I was just a little bigger than this. I know what I'm doing, Bobby sighed. I know, Dean. It's just you never had to cook when your daddy dropped you boys off here. I see you now and I just kinda slipped back into Uncle Bobby mode. I always knew you could take care of yourself, I just enjoyed doing a little bit of it for YA. There was silence in the room for a moment. Thanks for that, Uncle Bobby. Dean smiled. Breakfast's ready, though. Well, let us get the table set, then. After breakfast, they all gathered in the study. I found the cure, Bobby announced. Really? Dean exclaimed. Yeah. It's a general antidote that works on most cases of supernatural poisonings. I didn't know there was such a thing. Sam commented. Well, there is. And I got all but one of the ingredients. Dude, that's awesome. Dean looked ready to start jumping up and down in excitement. But Sam must have seen something in Bobby's expression. What's the catch? The last ingredient changes with each different case. The antidote needs something added to it to alter the contents into the specialized formula. It needs a sample of whatever poisoned the victim. Wait, Dean spoke up. You mean, we need to get a sample of the Edicopscapning's venom? Dean sat for a moment, absorbing what Bobby had just said. They need to somehow get the venom of an Edicopscapning to complete the antidote he needed. How the hell were they supposed to do that? There was no way the others would let him help with the hunt, and he wasn't going to let Sam do it on his own. Cass might be able to go with his brother and lend a hand, but then Bobby and him would be left alone, and if trouble showed up they'd be royally screwed. There had to be some other way. Would a sample of my blood work? Dean asked suddenly. I got the venom in me. Good idea, but no. Bobby replied. This ingredient is to let the potion adjust to what it has to eradicate. I don't think you want it to target both the venom and your own DNA. Dean's clothes. Sam exclaimed. They had the stuff all over them. I left them back in the cave, but I can go get them. It has to be a fresh sample. Bobby shot Sam's idea down as well. You'll need to use a needle to extract it straight from the creature's venom sacs. And where are those? In its mouth. This just keeps getting better and better. Dean muttered, it'll be fine. Sam insisted. We track it down, I go kill the thing and get the venom. Yeah, 'cause killing it proved to be so easy last time. Dean pointed out, why can't kill it first, why idiot? Its weakness is fire. How gonna extract fresh venom from a brick of charcoal? The room was silent for a moment while everyone contemplated the best course of action. I guess then I'll have to somehow stun it long enough to get what we need. One more bit of bad news. Bobby announced. More? Dean asked. You're really killing my chances at a good mood here. Bobby ignored him and continued. In all the cases I could find where this all-purpose antidote was used, there was a time limit. After a certain point the venom is completely integrated in the victim's body and the cure becomes useless. How long do we have? Sam inquired. About another 36 hours. And after that? Dean asked. You're gonna have to enroll in kindergarten all over again. It'll be permanent? Sam questioned. Yep, dude, no way am I going through school again. You have a GED. Sam shrugged. Kindergarten wouldn't be that challenging for you. Dean glared at him. He knew his brother was trying to lighten the mood, but the thought of having to grow up all over again was causing him to panic. He couldn't stay like this. Small, helpless, nothing but a burden to those he loved. No freaking way, then we head out now. He declared. You're not going, Dean. Like hell I'm not. What if you find Eddie, get the venom, but make it back here too late? It'll save time if I'm with you. He's got a point. Bobby agreed. No. Sam shook his head. I will accompany you to assure his safety. Cass offered. Great. Dean exclaimed. So, we're good to go. Not yet, you're not. I still gotta get the rest of the ingredients whipped up and track your spider friend down. What can we do to help? The now older Winchester asked. Check the computer for anything that'll tip us off on the creature's whereabouts. Got it. Sam declared, moving to go get his laptop. Castile, you're with me. I may need an extra hand. Bobby moved into the kitchen, presumably to start work on the antidote. What can I do? Dean called after him. Stay out of trouble for once. Was the only response he got. Dean hopped off the chair and kicked the desk in frustration. He wasn't thrilled with the dismissal he'd gotten. He knew that there wasn't much he could contribute, but he hated the idea of being useless. He just needed to do something. Anything. Of course, there was always something that made him feel better, and she did currently need his help. Dean pulled his black flannel shirt on over his Batman tee and slipped out the front door quietly, knowing that the others would object to his plan to repair his baby by himself. Replacing a taillight was a piece of cake, though. Even a real 4-year-old could probably handle it. And he knew where Bobby kept the spare parts for the Impala. The real question was whether he'd need to replace the bumper or if he could pound the dents out. With the pent-up energy and emotions that were running through him, he figured he'd be able to bang it back in shape no problem. Replacing the taillight turned out to be much more of a challenge than he'd originally figured. His tiny fingers had a difficult time grasping objects and he lacked the strength he'd needed. But Dean was determined, and finally that job was complete. He decided to take a break before trying to fix the bumper. He was ready to go back inside when he heard someone creeping around behind a pile of junk not far from him. Dean looked to the front door of Bobby's house and knew that he'd never make it in time if the person out here meant him harm. His best option was to hide and hope that he hadn't been spotted yet. The young hunter dropped to the ground and crawled under the Impala. If the uninvited visitor didn't know he was out here and wasn't looking too hard for him, then he'd be fine. Very quietly, Dean reached into his back pocket and pulled out his cell phone. Propping himself up on his elbows, the boy got ready to text an SOS to his brother. Unfortunately, he hadn't remembered to plug in the device last night and the screen failed to light up. The battery was dead. Just like he'd be if he didn't get some help. Just then, a pair of boots came into view. Then another. Dean placed the useless phone on the ground and put his knees and hands into position to crawl out of there and flee if it came to that. The feet stopped right near his hiding spot. You said he was out here. A hushed voice accused. He was. I saw him. The kid must be gone back inside. Well, we can't exactly go strolling into that place. Not with all the protections in there. Ah, demons. He'll be back out. This piece of old crap isn't completely fixed yet. Okay, now they were dead. No one talked about the Impala like that and got away with it. Of course their demise would have to wait until Dean had backup, but it would happen. Maybe he heard us and that's why he went inside. If so, he won't be coming back out alone. No, if he heard us, we'd have heard him go back in. Or saw him, something? I don't think he went back in at all. There's a good chance he's still out here somewhere. Dean felt his heart start to beat wildly. He was screwed. He tried desperately to calm himself down. They hadn't yet found him. There was no reason to panic. Check around the car. I'll start checking these other piles of junk. Okay, now there was a reason to panic. Dean saw one pair of boots start to move off while the other got in position to check under the Impala. Dean pulled out his knife and stabbed the demon in the leg. There was a scream of pain, but Dean ignored it as he scrambled out from under the vehicle and took off running towards the house. Sam! Sam, get out here now! Dean called as loud as he possibly could. The boy was only halfway to his destination when an arm wrapped itself around his neck. Dean was pulled off his feet. He hung with his legs dangling in the air as he fought and struggled with all his might. It was no use, and now the mighty Dean Winchester meets his end. The demon hissed in his ear. Dean would snap back with a brilliant comeback if his air supply wasn't completely cut off. Drop him! A voice ordered. Dean looked over to see Sam coming towards him. Cass was right behind the hunter while Bobby sat in his wheelchair on the porch, shotgun in hand. The cavalry had come. It was both a relief and a source of humiliation. Dean was getting tired of having to have his tiny little us saved constantly. Come any closer and we will kill him. From the corner of his eye, Dean saw the other demon step up next to him. Let him go or I will kill you. Sam countered. You wouldn't dare do anything to endanger his life. You're planning on killing him no matter what I do, so I may as well take you out. Dean was beginning to feel lightheaded from the lack of air. He really wished that Cass was up to full power and could just smite the crap out of the two demons. Of course, if the angel was at complete strength, then Dean would been fixed already and none of this would be happening right now. You know what? You're right. We are going to kill him. Dean felt the arm tighten even further and realized that this was going to be the end. Suddenly, he felt his attacker shake and then heard a brief scream. Dean was released and dropped down onto the ground. He hit the gravel hard but tried to ignore the pain so that he could figure out what happened. A quick look-up revealed that none of his friends had moved from their positions. But they were staring at something behind Dean. The small hunter rolled into a sitting position to see what was there. Looming over him was a very familiar and very smug-looking figure. Hey, Zach! Dean gasped out through his still aching throat. Hello, Dean! Zachariah replied. Well, thank you for the rescue, but I somehow doubt that you saved me out of the kindness of that shriveled-up husk that passes as your heart. And you'd be right. Dean heard Sam and Cass running towards him, but at that moment, the not-so-heavenly angel reached out his pudgy fingers and touched Dean's head. Everything went dark. Sam stood observing the spot in which his brother had sat simply seconds ago, before Zachariah had touched him and made them each disappear to some unknown place. Some vicinity wherein that they had little or no danger of finding him. Rattling! Sam shouted as he kicked at the free gravel as difficult as he could, launching it through the air. He changed into pissed. He turned into pissed at Zachariah for kidnapping his brother. Pissed at Dean for sneaking out of the house and putting himself in chance. However, usually he was pissed at himself for not retaining an eye at the small infant. He'd been so absorbed in his research that he hadn't even concept approximately what Dean might be doing. He ought to have known that his brother wouldn't were capable of quietly sit down in the residence for hours. But once again Sam had assumed the function of the little brother and left Dean to take care of himself while he did what he wanted. It was the family dynamic he'd grown up with, and adjusting to being concerned for his brother turned into difficult. He should only believe the challenges Dean had faced even as elevating him all the years. Sam wasn't pretty certain how he become going to manage if they couldn't opposite his brother's circumstance. However, proper now the most important issue changed into going to be locating his brother. Sam, get yours returned internal before something else suggests up. Bobby's voice jerked Sam out of his mind. He grew to become to stand the older hunter and noticed that Bobby was gesturing for him to come back. With a sigh, Sam walked slowly lower back in the direction of the porch, feeling his anger and frustration build with every step. Whilst he reached his wheelchair-certain friend, he stopped and punched the wall. What are we going to do now, Bobby? Even supposing we get this antidote prepare in time, we don't have a Dean to give it to. Look, I apprehend your frustration, however standing on my porch whining about it ain't gonna assist no person. We gotta preserve our heads. How am I imagined to do that? I ought to been preserving an eye on him and now he's long gone. We do not even realize what Zachariah is doing to him. He's going to possibly try and offer to restore Dean in change for him saying sure to being Michael's vessel. Cass spoke up. Whilst Dean refuses, he will then attempt to threaten and torture the wanted answer out of your brother. Wow, Cass, thanks. Sam snapped on the angel. That makes me sense a lot higher. I was most effective seeking to answer your question, not offer consolation. I am so satisfied which you're a warrior and not a mother or father angel, because you suck at handling humans. I thought I did as an alternative well along with your brother. Perhaps it is just you that it is enough. Bobby reduce in. Sam, Castile become handiest looking to help. Then he grew to become at the angel. And also you need to prevent channeling Dean by means of arguing with Sam, it's not helping anybody. You are proper of direction. Cus tilted his head down as if he were a scolded infant. Sorry, Bobby. Sam knew he'd simply picked a combat with Castile to relieve the pent-up anger he turned into feeling. Appropriate. Now that I don't got a fear about the two of you stepping into a wrestling suit, how about I inform you our subsequent move? Sounds excellent. Then allow us go on in and we'll speak it. After they were all seated in Bobby's observe, the older hunter cleared his throat to signal the start of the communicate. Sam, we got the antidote almost finished. I got more matters to feature and then it's going to simply want the venom. You may continue as we planned. Find the Edicop scapning, get the venom, and complete the antidote. In the meantime, Castile over here will locate Dean. And earlier than you protest, this makes the most sense. You have tracked and fought this aspect earlier than and Cass can find his angel friend simpler than you could. Zachariah, isn't he my buddy? We are a long way from being pals. It is a discern of speech, Cass. Sam informed him. And that I consider you our plan, Bobby. As a good deal as I might want to be the one out seeking out Dean, this is the high-quality arrangement. Bobby nodded. Of route it's miles. And I will be right here, setting calls and searching out leads for the each of YA. All of us keep in touch. Understood. Cass nodded, after which vanished. Get lower back to your studies, boy. Bobby ordered as he rolled his chair out of the room. Sam sat back down at the PC. He had an excessive amount of good fortune, but he was looking to compare missing kids' reviews with outbreaks of spiders. The Edicop scapning was regarded to lay many eggs very frequently. However, while the toddlers hatched, they were simply the size of barely massive spiders and nearly none survived to adulthood. It became guessed that handiest one Edicop scapning hatchling became an adult every decade or so. They had been a loss-of-life species. At that moment Sam needed that they had grown to be extinct longer. By the point Bobby had completed his part of the antidote, Sam had observed what he hoped turned into the spider creature's course. It wasn't very a ways from where the brothers had battled it the first time. It regarded to have just crossed the border into Utah, which could upload a pair extra hours to the drive. Which supposed that if he had any hope of pulling this off in time, he'd need to depart very quickly. Sam stood and started out packing up his PC. Right here it's miles. Bobby surpassed Sam a steel thermos. Thank you, Bobby. Once you got the component down, you got to extract the venom from the sac in its mouth with this. He handed Sam a big syringe. Be cautious no longer to allow it spray the stuff at YA. It don't produce an awful lot at a time and takes a while to reload, so if the venom is wasted it's going to take hours before you obtain some other shot. Sam popped the syringe. So this is why it failed to spray me after it were given Dean. It turned into all out of venom. Yep. After you accrued it, upload it to the aggregate and shake well. Does Dean should drink this? Nope. Simply provide it to him the identical way he was poisoned and it need to paintings. Must? Will. Sam sighed. Thanks for everything, Bobby. Simply get our boy back to normal. Nicely, Dean ordinary anyway. It truly is the plan. Supernatural, 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 supernatural. Dean blinked his eyes and set free a smooth groan. He right away knew that he'd been transported somewhere and that his taxi provider had been rough with him. He were given to his arms and knees and lifted his head to go searching. He became in a few sort of warehouse with boarded up home windows. The large location changed into packed with antique timber crates that had lengthy in the past been abandoned. Dean got to his feet and walked slowly across the bloodless room, listening to the tiny echoes his shoes made at the concrete floor. When he came to a door, he attempted to open it despite the fact that he had a sense it might be pointless. He changed into proper. It was locked. With a sigh, the boy became around and got here face to face with Zachariah. Well, perhaps not head to head. Along with his new lack of height, it became greater like face to belly. Dude, what the hell? Kidnapping youngsters is a critical offense, asshole. You have to be thanking me, Dean. I saved your existence. Yeah, properly, I really think I favored the demons. Huge words from this kind of little boy. Small brain from one of these fat piece of crap. Dean shot returned. I would watch my tone if I had been you. Nicely then, I wager it's a very good aspect you're now not me. Dean tried to behave casual approximately their dialogue, but in truth he turned into terrified. He knew that this angel have been an impressive opponent whilst Dean himself were an grown-up. And proper now this changed into the very definition of an unfair combat. However, there was no manner in hell he'd allow Zachariah in on how scared he become. So, I'm assuming you failed to deliver me here for milk and cookies. Even though a snack could be alternatively excellent. The angel gave him a rather creepy smile. No, you're now not right here for refreshments. You're here so that I allow you to along with your little hassle. The little trouble shaggy dog story has already been advised, and it wasn't that funny the primary time around. Less so coming from you. In any case, I can repair you in your right age. And the trap is? Dean requested, even though he already had a sense what the answer might be. You compromised to be Michael S. Vessel. Permit me consider that, nope. Sorry, the solution is still no. I am questioning, you may need to exchange your solution. You're proper. I do want to exchange it. My new solution is pass screw yourself. You are making a massive mistake. How lengthy do you surely think you may final in case you stay a small infant? Longer than you will ultimate as soon as I am getting my arms on something to end you. I am attempting that will help you. No, you're trying to get a meat suit in your friend. And that is no longer going to appear. Ever. Why maintain this up, Dean? Pronouncing sure is to your exceptional interest. Right, purpose you care so much approximately me. Appearance Zach, let us just drop the entire I am right here to help you crap. You want to restoration me up so that I'll say yes, Michael can have a fully grown vessel another time, after which you can have your apocalypse. I say no deal. I was hoping you'll be affordable. Now I see that isn't going to show up, however do not think for a 2D that you will leave here without announcing sure. I was trying to be high quality earlier then, but if force is the simplest issue you Winchester's reply to, then so be it. Sam pushed the gas pedal further towards the floor and prayed that he wouldn't pass any police cars. It was risky, but he had to get to his destination as soon as possible if he was going to complete his task in time. Besides, Dean broke speed limits all the time and was rarely pulled over. Sam kept running the timetable over and over in his head. They had started with 36 hours, maybe less. They spent 6 hours getting the antidote made and tracking the creature. That left 30 hours. It was a 17-hour car trip to the town that Sam believed the Edicop Scapning was lurking around in. That left 13 hours. 3 hours were allotted for bathroom breaks, food, and the inevitable traffic jam that always happened when he was in a hurry. That left 10 hours. He'd need to sleep at some point or he'd be useless in a fight. That left 4 hours. And he still didn't know the exact location of the spider-like monster. So he had 4 hours, maybe less, to find the Edicop Scapning, stun it somehow, get the venom, complete the antidote, get in touch with Castile, who would hopefully have rescued Dean by then, meet up with them and administer the cure to his brother. Piece of cake. Sam was also aware of the fact that the demons would not know that Dean was no longer traveling with him and might attack again. And considering the fact that he'd killed a few already, they might send more than 2 next time. Of course, upon seeing that Dean wasn't there, they probably wouldn't spend too much effort on him, but he couldn't afford any delays. And then there was always the fact that Sam couldn't keep his mind off of what Zachariah could be doing to Dean at that moment. The angel had tortured Dean at their last meeting to get him to agree to be the Archangel Michael S. Vessel, and there was no reason to believe that the same thing wouldn't happen this time. Castile had pretty much said that it would definitely be the outcome. Sam knew that his brother was no stranger to pain and torture and had withstood a great deal. The guy had spent time in hell after all. But this was a completely different set of circumstances than usual. Right now Dean was just a kid. As much as he was still Dean and was trying to put on a brave front, Sam was very aware of the fact that his emotions were severely compromised. The boy had had a hard time dealing with the nightmares of the torment he'd endured, and Sam couldn't imagine how he'd cope with the things Zachariah would do to him. He had no doubt that Dean's status as a 4-year-old wouldn't stop the angel from harming him. And Sam worried that it wouldn't take much to break his now little brother. Sam prayed that Castile got there before Dean had to endure too much. Sam pulled out his cell phone and called the angel. "Hello, Cass, it's Sam." "Hello, Sam. Have you found Dean? Don't you think I would have called you if I did?" "I guess. I am looking into it. I will find him. Don't worry. Can't you just pop in on them?" "That would be difficult since I do not know where they are." Castile was beginning to sound a little annoyed. "Well, can't you, Sam? I can either try to find and rescue your brother or I can waste my time on the phone with you. It's your choice. You know I want you to find Dean." "Then goodbye, Sam." When Sam heard a click followed by a dial tone, he threw his phone down in frustration. Great. An angel had just hung up on him. Well, that just about completed his crappy day. He knew that he probably shouldn't have bothered Cass, but he couldn't stop thinking about Dean and hoping that he was rescued soon. The completed antidote would do them no good if Dean was dead or too broken to fix. Hours later, Sam pulled the car into a motel parking lot. He wanted to keep going, to get as close to his destination as possible, but his vision was getting blurry and his reaction time was suffering. He wouldn't be a help to his brother if he got into an accident. And Dean would have his ass if he put another scratch on the Impala. He'd have to settle in and get some sleep. Hopefully tomorrow would be a better day. Supernatural, 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 supernatural. Dean curled himself up into a tiny ball and tried to stop the tears that were streaming down his face. It was completely useless though. He'd already cried and screamed and shrieked in pain and fear in front of Zachariah, so he really had no dignity left to preserve. Well, maybe some because he hadn't begged or agreed to the angel's terms. And neither of those things would ever happen no matter what that fat piece of crap did to him next. He wouldn't break. Dean had lost that battle in hell. He'd said yes then and had since vowed that he'd never be that weak again. It didn't matter that he was now only 4 years old. It didn't matter that his body was not able to take anywhere near as much punishment as it once could due to his severely reduced pain threshold that came with his small form. It didn't matter that his emotions were out of control and he could practically feel his mental walls cracking under the weight of what was happening to him. None of that mattered. He had to keep saying no this time. "So, have you decided to change your answer yet?" Dean picked his head up to shoot Zachariah what he hoped was a defiant look. "What do you think?" "I think you should say yes. Tell you what. Change the question to does Dean think that Zach is a dick? And I'll answer it with a yes." Dean felt the impact of the angel's foot against his arms that were wrapped protectively around his body. He let out a cry of pain as he rolled over with the force of the blow. Had his arms not been in the way, he'd have a few seriously damaged ribs. Dean rolled back over to face his opponent, not liking the thought of not knowing what would happen next. But the next strike didn't come. Instead, Zachariah smiled down at him as a cat would to a captured mouse. "I'll be right back. Just checking on something." With that, the angel disappeared. Dean struggled to his feet, tears still leaking from his eyes. He swiped them away angrily and looked around the warehouse. There was no way for him to escape. He already knew that the doors were locked and the windows were just too damned high for him to reach. If his body was that of a 30-year-old, he'd be able to possibly stack some crates to reach an escape route, but as it was, he was stuck. He knew that Sam would come for him, but wondered if there'd be anything left of him for his brother to find. Zachariah hadn't been very gentle so far, and Dean doubted that would change for the better. Of course, the angel couldn't hurt him if his evil ass wasn't there. Dean limped over to the closest wall and looked around the floor. He picked up a nail and held it over one of the wounds he had on his arm from Zachariah's persuasive techniques. It had stopped bleeding, but Dean was about to fix that. Biting down on his lip, the boy reopened the cut and watched as blood welled up and then spilled down his tiny arm. He was glad that no one was around to hear the pathetic whimper that escaped him. With his other hand he scooped up his blood and began to draw the symbol that Cass had taught him. His hand shook terribly, but he figured that it was looking pretty accurate anyway. Dean chuckled slightly at the thought that he was a 4-year-old and was creating a very unusual finger painting. "Kids, don't try this at home." When he was done, he stood back to admire his handiwork. Not bad. Now all he had to do was wait for Mr. Douchebag to get back, and then he'd slap his palm on it and be rid of the guy for a while. and hopefully Sam would find him before Zachariah made it back. Having a plan, taking control of his destiny, was making Dean feel slightly better. He was still trembling, his heart beating a bit too fast, but the waterworks had finally stopped. The tiny hunter felt a glimmer of hope. Just then, 2 hands grabbed him around his upper arms, lifted him up and threw him partway across the large room. The boy slammed into a large wooden crate with enough force that he heard it crack. At least he hoped it was the box that had cracked. Dean fell to the floor in a heap. He looked up to see Zachariah walking towards him and the tears started back up. He'd been so close. But he wouldn't give up. Dean got to his feet and went to run back to the symbol he'd drawn, but a sharp pain shot through his leg and the limb just wouldn't support him. He collapsed back onto the cement. "Did you really think you'd be able to get rid of me that easily?" "Was kinda hoping," Dean managed to say in between the sobs of pain and despair that he was trying to hold back. "Well, it doesn't look like that's going to happen." As Zachariah bent down to grab Dean once more, the boy pulled the nail he'd picked up earlier from his pocket and slashed at the angel's face. His efforts were rewarded with a howl of pain and rage. Dean crawled past the wounded angel and hurried towards the wall once again. He never made it. Zachariah lifted him into the air and spun him around so they were face to face. "You little pieces of crap," Zachariah spat out. "You are a small insignificant bug that I can squash however I please." Dean braced himself for another blow, but then the angel seemed to calm. "But now I see that it'll take a bit more to convince you to say yes. And why should I stress about coming up with new tortures when you've known so much already? So here is the new deal, you can say yes now, or I can let you sleep for the rest of the night. A nightmare-filled sleep where you can relive all the torment you knew in hell and one wake until I decide. I'll take door number 3. Dean responded, trying to sound far braver than he felt. He'd already had 2 nights of those memories and did not want to do it again, especially if he could not wake from them. But there was still no way that he'd agree to Zachariah's terms. So be it. Zachariah smiled his evil-looking smile again. "Have an unpleasant night, Dean. And just so you know, I checked on a surprise for you tomorrow. I'm sure you'll love it." Dean had no chance to wonder what the hell the angel was speaking of because at that moment Zachariah touched his forehead and Dean's mind descended to hell once more. The pain changed into all ingesting, to the factor where Dean couldn't even inform what changed into being done to his frame anymore. The demon turned into cutting him, that he become positive of because he'd caught a glimpse of a bloody knife a few minutes or had it been hours ago. However, all the ache had mixed collectively and he could not inform wherein he was reduced or maybe if there was any pores and skin left on his frame. Earlier than this had started, the demon had burned him, in the beginning slowly after which ending with covering him in accelerant and placing him alight. That had harm like a bitch. Once he'd been restored to complete health, he'd been crushed, boiled, flayed, eaten alive via rats, and been subjected to several different awful torments that had all started to blend together. It never stopped. And the ache wasn't something that someone could just get used to and start to address. Specifically not whilst hell turned into so creative. He knew he ought to forestall all of it by way of pronouncing sure, but something internal of himself kept reminding him that this time the stakes had been too high. Dean wasn't certain what this time intended, as he became sure he'd never been tortured in hell earlier than, nor did he knew what the stakes were. However, he relied on his instincts and saved up his defiance. Whilst he felt a blade enter through his left eye and pierce his brain. No longer for the first time, Dean wanted that he may want to lapse into an unconscious country and just rest for a piece. Then the pain stopped. Dean felt no comfort although, due to the fact he knew that handiest supposed he'd been constant up in order that he might be ready for the subsequent round. "My solution is nonetheless no," Dean growled. "I am satisfied to hear that." The reaction became unexpected. First off, due to the fact there was no way that the demons might be thrilled with his loss of compliance, and secondly, the voice was one of a kind that common. It turned into full of compassion and situation. Dean sat up and upon seeing who become standing next to the rack he have been mendacity on, he remembered everything. "Cass! How did you discover me?" "I have not. I used to be able to locate your dream and talk to you right here. however I nonetheless don't know where Zachariah has taken you. I desire I could inform you. Dean shrugged as he jumped off the rack to stand next to his buddy. He looked down at himself. Not most effective. Did he now not have a mark on him? He become his proper age in his dream. All I recognize is that we are in some type of warehouse. That's no longer very helpful. Dude, it's not like Zach gave me a map with a large crimson X that asserts you are here. Why might you assume him to try this? I did not. I'm simply saying it's an expression, Cass. Dean shook his head. But Guy, is it excellent to peer you? And also you as well. How are you? Absolutely, I've been better. You angel friend is an ass. Why does all of us preserve calling him my friend? Another expression. Don't worry about it. Then something came about to the hunter. Wait, Zach can't experience you in right here, can he? No longer, except he is trying to, and he has no cause to suspect that I am right here. We ought to be safe for a while. And if he does discover? He'll wake you and probably hold you from dreaming to keep away from the two folks being in touch. You don't suppose he's going to are available in and try to put off you? No, it might be a chance for him to confront me. Why? I mean, no offense, however you are lacking some of your mojo and he's jogging at full capability. That is actual. But in an instantaneous disagreement there may be a chance that I'll be capable of music him return to his place within the real international. Oh. Properly, please inform me that you guys are near locating me. The appearance on the angel's face gave him his answer before Cuss had even spoken. I am searching. Nicely, that is simply first rate. What approximately, Sam? He's monitoring down the creature that poisoned you to get the venom wanted for the antidote. Via himself? Sure. This is not gonna end properly. Sam stated. He turned into assured that he should do it. Yeah, properly. I will allow you to in on a bit secret. Human beings lie. That isn't plenty of a secret. You informed me of this not too lengthy in the past. Nicely, it is nonetheless genuine. There was silence for a moment. Then Cass modified the problem. What can you tell me approximately the warehouse that you are being stored in? It is antique. It is filled with wooden crates and some of them seem to maintain furniture. It's only one tail, however it's kinda tall. Home windows close to the top. Oh, and there are spider webs and spiders anywhere, which normally would not freak me, but considering all that came about currently, they provide me the creeps. Aren't there spider webs in all old buildings? Yeah, but questioning returned on it, there is an overabundance here. Perhaps Dick Angel picked this specific warehouse on cause, just to clutter with me. It seems like something Zachariah could do. None of what I told you may assist you find me, will it? Now, not probably. However, I'm able to locate you, Dean. I know. And I'll maintain out till then. I recognize you will. They stood in companionable silence for some time before the angel spoke again. I have to move. Hold my seek. No. Dean cried out. Dean, if I do not go, I can't locate you. But in case you leave, the nightmare will start once more, might not it? It is in all likelihood. Then please don't go away. Simply live a little at the same time as longer. Dean knew he likely sounded pathetic, but he wanted a ruin from the torment, and he additionally failed to want to be alone again. Kerr seemed to do not forget his alternatives and then nodded. All right. Thanks, Cass. Hours later, Dean woke up with a start and got here head-to-head with Zachariah. Appropriate morning, he said with an evil searching grin. I consider you slept properly. The recollections of his time in hell have been sparkling in his thoughts, however so was the time he spent together with his friend. All in all, Dean became doing a long way better than he expected. Virtually, it became as a substitute fresh. Hell is a lot greater fine than your enterprise, and the demon's appearance better too. Zachariah backhanded him across the face. The boy grunted in pain as he felt blood leak out of his nose. Now that he turned into conscious, he felt all of the aches and pains that the angel had inflicted on his tiny body the day earlier than. Dean's head changed into pounding and he felt something sticky at the left facet of his face, leading him to agree with that being thrown into the wood crate had left him with a quite awful reduce on his brow. His previously dislocated shoulder changed into throbbing, but fortunately nonetheless in its socket. The pain radiating from his left leg intended that it turned into probable fractured, but hopefully no longer damaged. The cuts on his frame nevertheless stung, but have been nothing too awful. Had he been up to his normal degree of crap dealing, this would look like nothing. However, to a for 12 months antique frame it was a little overwhelming. But he had to live sturdy and keep on. Assist became coming. Zachariah stepped returned from Dean and sneered down at him. You observed you're so smart, don't you? I recognize I'm a piece smarter. Dean regarded up at him with huge eyes. Wow, sincerely? Due to the fact I figured that an real 4-year-old turned into likely extra smart than you. You watched your insults suggest something to me? Properly, because you seem to be getting pissed the longer I speak, I might have to go along with yeah. Snort now. However, in only a little while, whilst our guest arrives, you 1T be doing lots greater than screaming in suffering. Guest? What you subsequently found out that you'll by no means have the ability to break me on your own. You had to name in backup? It is not that in any respect. The two of you have some unfinished business. Unfinished enterprise? What are you talking approximately? Who is coming? Dean changed into getting a little worried about the conceited look on Zachariah's face. I consider you name him Eddie. Dean felt fear wash over him. He knew what the Edicop scapning did to youngsters. Dude, 1T Michael be kinda ticked off that you fed his vessel to a giant spider. After its miles performed consuming you, I will carry you again. And if your solution is still no, well, permit us just say that the Edicop scapning can have a by no means ending buffet along with Dean Winchester. Supernatural. Sam backed the Impala out of the resort parking zone and took a chew of the Pop-Tart he bought from the merchandising system. Just as he suspected, it changed into stale. However, ingesting it might keep him a stop for breakfast and let him entire his undertaking that a whole lot faster. He filled a thermos with similarly stale coffee from the device within the motel room, so he become ready. Hopefully, he have lunch at a nice diner someplace along with his older brother after the whole thing become over with. And Dean might be paying. Just a few minutes later, Sam's mobile cell phone began to ring. Good day. Howdy, Sam. Cass. Did you find him? Not precisely. I spoke with him in his dream, however he couldn't supply me his vicinity. Sam felt upset that his brother changed into nonetheless missing. But as a minimum the angel stated that he had touch with him, which intended that Dean become nonetheless alive. You spoke with him? How is he? Not well. We want to hurry. What is wrong with Dean? What befell? Sam changed into alarmed by means of the angel's response. Zachariah is torturing him and subjecting him to his reminiscences of hell. I am going to kill the bastard. That might be really helpful. I stayed with Dean in his desires until he awoke to keep the reminiscences at bay. It helped him but value me some time that I might have been looking. So we still don't have any clue as to where they are? All your brother ought to inform me become that he was being kept in an old, one-tail fixtures warehouse. No different information? Sam asked. His hopes of locating Dean were diminishing. No, except that he was unnerved via the copious amount of spiders in the building. It is not beneficial. Spiders are everywhere. That's what I advised him. However, he regarded to feel that there had been a larger range of them than regular. With that, something clicked into place in Sam's thoughts. What number of extra? Like lots greater than regular? I did in TC for myself, but it becomes sufficient to warrant Dean commenting on them. Why? Does this suggest something to you? Yeah, Cass, I suppose it does. I suppose it approached that we're each headed for the identical area. Sam tried to contain his excitement as he told Cass that they were headed for the same place, but the knowledge that they soon find his brother was invigorating. And not only would they find Dean, Sam would now be able to help rescue the boy. The hunter had accepted that saving Dean was the Angel's job, while he would get the antidote completed, but he was never completely happy with that arrangement. Maybe a little of Dean's big brother attitude had rubbed off on him, but Sam felt that he himself should be the one to come to Dean's aid. Besides, 2 rescuers were better than 1, and it sounded like his brother could use all the help he could get. "What do you mean?" Cass asked. "My research indicated that the Edicops scapning is constantly laying eggs once they nest. When they hatch, the babies resemble regular spiders, but there are far more than you would usually find in one area. And the town that I'm heading to, where I believe the Edicops scapning has nested, doesn't have any large caves in the area, but there are several old, abandoned warehouses that could seem appealing to a large spider-like creature searching for a home. So, you believe that the warehouse Dean is in is the Edicops scapning's nest and the spiders he saw are the babies? That is what I'm thinking. Where are you now?" "I'm on Interstate 80. I just passed a sign welcoming me to Rock Springs, Wyoming. I still have a couple of hours to go." "Where exactly are we going?" Sam jumped and jerked his head to the right, because the voice had come from the passenger seat instead of the phone. The Impala almost went off the road, but Sam managed to get the car back under control. "Damn it, Cass! Are you trying to make me crash?" "No. I just didn't anticipate your overreaction." "Overreaction?" "You just appeared next to me without warning." "I'd say my reaction was called for," Castile didn't respond. Sam wondered sometimes how his brother got along so well with the Angel, because Castile's lack of interpersonal skills was really getting on his nerves. Of course, no one had ever accused Dean of having great manners either, so maybe that's why they made good friends. After a moment, Castile once more asked what their final destination was. "A small town in Utah, not too far past the state line." "Why?" "I'm going to go there now and see if I can help Dean." "No way, man. If you go in alone, Zachariah will take you out within seconds. We're going to be up against both the Angel and the spider creature. I think it's best if we stay together." Sam wanted Dean rescued as soon as possible, but he doubted that either Castile or himself could take out both threats single-handedly. "But I can." "No. Dean's chances of survival greatly improve if we stick together." There was a pause, and then Castile sighed. "You're right." Another pause. "You're not too bad at being an older brother." Sam forced a smile in return, but he couldn't quite bring himself to believe those words. He'd been a big brother for only a couple of days, and look what had happened to his little brother. Sam just hoped he'd be able to rescue Dean before it was too late to improve his crappy track record. He pressed down on the gas pedal and cursed the fact that it was going to be a while before he'd reach the town. And then he'd still have to find the correct warehouse. "I can bring you with me," Castile offered. "What? Instead of driving, I can transport both of us to the location you believe Dean to be at. It will be much quicker than driving." "Cass, you're a genius. Just let me find a safe place to leave Dean's car. And we'll need to get any weapons we need from the trunk before we go." Sam sped up even more. After a few minutes, he saw an old, long-ago abandoned gas station, complete with a repair garage advertising cheap oil changes. He pulled up to the entrance and got out to open the garage door. It was not an easy task, but he finally pried it up and it rolled open with a squeak of protest. Sam returned to the driver's seat and pulled the Impala in. Once the car was parked, Sam got out and walked to the back of the car. Castile was already standing there. "You could help me open the door," Sam complained. "You did fine on your own." Sam shook his head as he popped the trunk. He retrieved all the weapons he thought might be useful, but no more than they could carry. After they exited the garage, Sam closed the door and turned to face Castile. "Let us go save Dean. Supernatural, 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 supernatural." Dean sat on the cold cement floor of the old furniture warehouse waiting to be eaten by a huge cow-sized spider creature. His arms were pulled behind his back, a coarse rope tying them together around his skinny wrists. Zachariah hadn't bothered to tie his legs together since his fractured one already prevented him from escape. "Dude, don't you think that it's a little pathetic that you have to tie up a 4-year-old? I mean, seriously, what do you think I'm gonna be able to do? I think that I'm not going to take any chances. And if you don't shut up, I'm going to gag you." "Now you're just getting kinky. I should warn you that I'm not into that kind of stuff with dudes, and you even suggesting it right now makes you one real sick pedophile." Do the other angels know you're such a perv? Zachariah backhanded him across his face yet again. Dean felt the tears leaking from his eyes once more and couldn't he even wipe them away. Look at the big, tough hunter sitting there crying like a baby. Zachariah taunted. Yeah well, you'd cry too if you had to look at your ugly face all day. And how pretty do you think you're going to look as the Edicop scapning dissolves your skin, rips the flesh from your bones, and chews you up? Dude, Eddie could do all that and poop me back out and I'd still look better than you. Dean kept his words tough, but he was scared. Really scared. The prospect of being eaten by the spider thing was terrifying, and he knew that some creatures took a long time to consume their food. He wasn't sure that his tiny little body could deal with that kind of agony. And if his mind finally snapped, where would that leave him? Also, Dean had considered the fact that if he did die and Zachariah brought him back in a brand new 4-year-old body, that maybe the antidote would no longer work for him. After all, it would no longer be a body affected by a toxin but a body created to be little. He could end up stuck as a 4-year-old, having to grow up all over again. Which would make him a permanent burden on his brother and effectively take him out of the fight to save this screwed up world. His dark thoughts made even more tears run down his cheeks. So much for his tough act. Zachariah turned from him and walked across the large room. Dean felt his eyes drawn to the symbol he'd painted on the wall. If only he'd been able to use it. But it was too late for that now. And with his hands tied behind his back he wouldn't get another chance. Turning his attention back to the douchebag disguised as an angel, Dean watched as Zachariah reached a large garage door and bent down to unlatch it. With a terrible screeching sound, the metal door opened, letting light pour into the warehouse. This door must have been left open for quite a while, allowing your spider friend access. I closed it for some privacy when we arrived, but I think that it's time to invite it back into its home, don't you? Dean shrugged. I'm sure it could find a new home, but where would the fun be in that? You know, Eddie probably won't even come in here with your smellier stinking up the place. Dean commented. He was hoping to make Zachariah leave. If the evil jerk wasn't looming over him, maybe he could escape somehow. Trust me, it won't even know I'm here. Lucky bastard. The little hunter mumbled just loud enough to make sure he was heard. Then Dean heard something skittering up the outside wall of the warehouse. The spiders all over the walls and ceiling reacted with what could only be considered excitement. The loud skittering could now be heard on the roof as the Edicop scapning made its way towards the open door. The spiders moved to greet it. And that's when Dean figured out what they actually were. Oh, God. Those are its babies. Fear and revulsion rose up in the small child and he vowed to squish any arachnid he ever saw for the rest of his life. Which was beginning to look like it would be a very short one. Zachariah just grinned and stepped back to stand by a pile of crates. With a thud, the gigantic spider-like beast dropped down in front of the open garage door. It looked far larger than last time Dean had laid eyes on it. Eddie hadn't grown, of course. But now Dean was so much smaller and his fear made the creature seem so much bigger. Dean tried desperately to free his hands as he scooted himself farther away from the Edicop scapning that was slowly stalking towards him. Sam felt disoriented as he and Castile appeared in the middle of a lot filled with old warehouses. Shaking off the feeling, he scanned the buildings trying to see if one of them matched Dean's description. Most did. He wondered if any of them were still in use. By the condition of both the warehouses and the lot, he doubted it. Cass, I don't even know where to begin. Going through each one would take much too long and may alert Zachariah to our presence. We need some kind of clue to point us in the right direction. Just then, Sam heard the loud screeching noise of metal rubbing against metal. It was similar to the sound the garage door at the gas station had made when it was opened. Sam turned around trying to pinpoint where it had come from. He was just about to ask Castile when he caught a glimpse of the Edicop scapning on the roof of one of the warehouses. I think we found a clue. The angel commented. You think that's where Dean is? Zachariah taking him to this particular place is not a coincidence. He must plan on feeding Dean to the creature if he continues to refuse to be Michael's vessel. Oh, hell no. Sam declared. There's no way that thing's getting anywhere near my brother. The hunter raised his flamethrower to a ready position. If you kill it, we can't complete the antidote. Castile reminded him. I'm not going to kill it. Just make damn sure it can't kill Dean. He was already running towards the warehouse that the creature had disappeared into, with the angel right behind him. "Once we're inside, I need you to close the door so that it can't escape, okay?" "Okay." Sam reached the open garage door just in time to hear a childish voice yell at the huge spider that was blocking his view of anything else in the room. "Dude, take one more step towards me and I swear to God that I'll find the biggest tub of Raid ever and give you a freaking bath in it." Sam would have smiled at his brother's comment if he hadn't heard the terror and pain in the boy's voice. The Edicop scapning lunged forwards and Dean let out a sharp scream. Sam didn't waste another second. "Get away from my brother!" the hunter shouted as he turned on the flamethrower. Flames shot out and licked at the monster. It was the Edicop scapning's turn to scream. An ear-piercing shriek filled the large warehouse, echoing off the metal walls and almost blocking out the sound of the garage door being pulled shut. Sam kept the flames on the Edicop scapning even as he began to smell the disgusting scent of meat cooking. But then the creature jumped away and clung to the ceiling. It quickly retreated to the back of the warehouse, making tiny pathetic noises as it went. Sam turned his attention to the small child curled up on the cement ground. Dean had obviously been beaten, his tiny body covered in bruises. There was dried blood caked on his arm where he'd been cut and another cut on his forehead. The boy's left leg was sticking out rather than tucked protectively into his body like the other leg and his arms were, so Sam assumed that the bone was injured, possibly broken. There was also blood leaking from a large puncture wound right under his knee where it looked like the Edicop scapning had bitten him. The boy was sobbing pitifully. Looking at all the damage inflicted on his little brother, Sam felt himself fill with an uncontrollable rage. He spun around and saw Zachariah step forwards. Without a single thought as to what the jerk that called himself an angel could do to him, Sam let out a wordless cry and ran at the piece of crap that had done all that to Dean. He saw a look of shock on Zachariah's face right before his own fist smashed the angel's nose. Then he saw nothing but red as his anger drove him to punch Zachariah over and over. Sam had the pudgy angel on the ground and was sitting on top of him as he continued to beat the hell out of the bastard. In the back of his mind he knew that if Zachariah got the upper hand, Sam's life could be over with but a thought, but he couldn't bring himself to care. "You filthy piece of crap. He's just a kid, you spineless ass, and look what you did. How the hell can you even call yourself an angel? You think this is God's plan? Torturing a 4-year-old? You make me sick, Sam." Castiel's voice broke through the red haze of rage that had taken up residence in Sam's mind. He turned his head and saw that the angel was gesturing to one of the walls. Sam glanced at the wall and saw the Enochian sigil that Dean had shown him how to draw to dispel angels. His brother must have somehow been able to paint it on the wall but had not been able to use it. But Sam could. "Keep him busy and get out of here when I say to," Sam ordered as he jumped to his feet. He knew Castiel couldn't win in a fight against the more powerful angel, but he just needed a few seconds to reach the symbol. He had almost reached it when an invisible force threw him against a crate. Sam got to his feet only to be pressed back into the wooden box with crushing strength by an unseen force. The air was pressed out of his lungs and the hunter felt as if all his bones would break at any moment. Sam was certain that he was about to pass out, but then Castiel intervened. "Hey!" the angel yelled. Zachariah turned just as Castiel swung the large wooden board he'd picked up from the ground. It connected with the evil angel's head, making him lose his invisible grip on Sam. The hunter didn't wait to see what would happen next in the fight between the two angels. He had an important task to carry out. Sam rushed over to the wall. The symbol was low on the wall due to Dean's diminished height, so Sam had to kneel down. When he'd seen Dean use the sigil before, his brother's palm had still been cut and bleeding and he wasn't sure if that was necessary for it to work, but Sam wasn't going to take any chances on getting this wrong. He pulled a knife from his pocket, sliced his left hand and held his open palm in front of the symbol. "Cass, now!" he yelled, but didn't turn to make sure that the angel had safely gotten away before slamming his hand onto the sigil. A brilliant flash of light filled the room. Sam turned to see that Dean and himself were the only ones left in the room besides the injured Edicop scapning that was still hiding far away from them. The hunter hoped Castiel had left on his own since that would mean he'd be able to return much sooner. Sam ran over to his brother and dropped down to crouch in front of him. The boy was still crying uncontrollably, seemingly oblivious to what had transpired around him in the last couple of minutes. Dean? Hey Dean, it's Sam. It's Sammy. You're safe now. The little boy looked up and Sam put on his most comforting smile, even though the bruises and tears on the child's face filled him with yet more anger at the creep who hurt his brother. Sammy? Yeah Dean, it's me. Before he could get another word out, Sam was shocked to find himself thrown backwards onto his bed as Dean leapt into his arms. The boy clung to Sam's shirt and buried his face under the hunter's chin. Sam wrapped Dean in his arms and held him tightly, feeling his own tears begin to fall. It was going to eat me. Dean choked out in between his sobs. It won't get you, Dean. I won't let it. Sam's heart was breaking more and more by the moment. He'd never seen his brother like this before, but he understood that the 4-year-old part of Dean had taken all he could and now the boy just couldn't hold himself together any longer. But Zach, he's gone, Dean. I got rid of him. He hurt me. That sentence came out barely above a whisper. I know, Dean. I know. Sam rubbed slow, soothing circles on the small child's back. After a few minutes, Dean's crying was reduced to the occasional hiccup and the boy seemed to finally relax. When he once again turned his face up towards Sam, the older hunter was pleased to see no fresh tears streaming from his eyes. Thanks. Dean mumbled. Sam wasn't sure if he was being thanked for saving his brother or comforting him. No problem. But dude, if you ever tell anybody about this, I'll shoot you. Okay. Sam smiled. It'll be our secret, I promise. Besides, it's not like anyone would ever believe it anyways. Damn straight they wouldn't, Dean proclaimed. So what happened? Cass and I beat the crap out of Zachariah and used your sigil to banish him. A grin lit up Dean's features. Awesome, good job drawing that, by the way. Sam praised. I don't know what we would be done without it. So what you're saying is that I helped save your ass, only after I saved yours. So where's Eddie? Fear crept back into the boy's expression. The Edicop Scapning is still crouched in the back of the warehouse, trying to hide from Sam. Sam looked up to see Castile standing next to them. I take it you got out in time. Sam commented, yes. How are you, Dean? I've been better. The boy admitted. I'm so ready for all of this to be over with. I think we all are. Sam agreed. Dean tried to get up out of Sam's lap, but gasped in pain when his left leg moved. Don't try to stand, Dean. Sam advised. Your leg's in bad shape. The child nodded, obviously trying to hold back more tears. Castile bent down and scooped Dean up into his arms. Once the boy was off of him, Sam got to his feet. He looked towards the other end of the large room and could see a dark shadow being cast by the spider creature. It was hiding behind a particularly large crate. Sam turned to Castile, who was still holding Dean. Keep him safe, Cass. I'm going to go finish this. Dean knew that he needed to order Cass to position him down, and even if he couldn't stand, then he could sit on one of the crates, but he felt secure within the angel's fingers and did not want to lose that feeling just yet. And Cass had presented his services as a mother or father angel to Dean the night before Ultimate. Besides, after latest activities it wasn't like he had any dignity left to maintain. So Dean wrapped his tiny palms round his pal's neck and grew to become his head to look at as Sam started out to slowly and quietly make his manner throughout the warehouse. We must assist him. Dean commented. How do you suggest we try this? I do not know. I'm simply saying. Without a plan, we might simplest be within the manor. Properly, what's Sam's plan? I trust he intends to stun it with that large board he simply picked up. Dude, this is in no way gonna paintings. Sam only wishes to distract the creature long sufficient to inject it with a sedative that he added with him. Then he can effectively extract the venom. We cannot let him do it by myself, Cass. Dean did not want his brother to die trying to gain the final element for the therapy that became needed to repair him. Sam changed into not going to get harm on Dean's account. However, he needed to convince Cass to assist because there has been simply no manner he may want to assist his brother on his own. Dean, we haven't any means of helping him. You're small and injured and that I don't have a weapon. Properly, maybe we can simply get a touch nearer. You already know, just in case. The angel regarded to recall that alternative for a moment. O.K. remarkable. Cass started to observe Sam in the direction of the back of the warehouse. Dean clung on tightly, burying his head inside the crook of the angel's neck so as no longer to peer the Edicop scapning. He wanted to help his brother, however. As they moved nearer, he felt the panic start to go back. That son of a winch had tried to devour him. Might he succeeded too if Sam hadn't shown up at simply the proper moment. Dean wondered briefly how they had discovered him, however determined that for the moment it failed to count number. The vital aspect became that he'd been rescued. It pissed him off a little that he'd wished rescuing within the first location, however the fact that it had been his sigil that had helped win the combat made the scenario slightly higher. Now if most effective, Sam might neglect about that whole chick flick crying second of his. Sam's cry of pain snapped him out of his thoughts and had him elevating his head to go searching. His brother turned into mendacity at the ground with one in every of Eddie's legs pinning him there. The wood board that had been his intended weapon lay on the floor just out of the hunter's attain. Cass, put me down and help Sam. Fry the bastard right now if you gotta, but don't let it kill Sam. Dean, if I burn it, we cannot retrieve the venom we want to. I understand, Cass. But Sam's more critical. Please. Dean did now not want to be caught as a toddler, however he would not let something happen to his brother. The angel nodded and placed Dean on a wood crate earlier than walking towards the struggle. If he were at complete electricity, the combat might be over in moments, but the manner matters were right now. It became all of us' guess as to how the battle might move. And it wasn't like Cass had lots in joy as a hunter. However, Dean did. And his brother and his friend wished him. Swallowing his pain and worry, Dean pushed off the crate and landed hard at the concrete ground. He bit lower back the cry that almost escaped his lips and did his exceptional to keep in his tears. Then, slowly and painfully, he commenced to move slowly to enroll in the others. As he got near, Dean saw Cass get flung lower back towards a timber crate, which shattered with the effect. A circulation of webbing observed, trapping the angel within the pile of broken forms and furniture. Dean peered around a crate and saw that Sam was over again on his toes. The hunter held a wood board in both hands as one could hold a baseball bat and swung it at Eddie's face. The makeshift weapon stuck the creature right throughout its eyes and it let loose a howl. Dean observed that a number of its eyes had been destroyed and just starting to heal, and assumed that his brother had reasoned that damage at their first come upon with the Edicop scapning. The boy watched as Sam pulled out a huge needle packed with an amber-colored liquid. Maybe his help wasn't going to be needed in any case. That concept made him both relieved and depressed. But it did not final long due to the fact the spider creature leapt up onto the ceiling and then dropped down again onto Sam. Dean wondered if that turned into how his brother had gotten pinned onto the ground the first time. Either way, this time Sam wasn't going. That allows you to pass anywhere because the beast had of its legs on Sam's thighs and trapping his hands. Dean saw the needle had rolled across the floor and turned into near the ruined crate that Cass had crashed into. As quietly as he may want to, the little hunter crawled over and reached out his hand. He snatched the syringe from the concrete and ducked in the back of a wooden box that changed into still intact. Dean's coronary heart was beating wildly and his respiratory turned into popping out in gasps as panic seized him. He knew that he had to do that and that he'd been in a long way worse conditions than this earlier than, however the 4-year vintage part of his thoughts was begging him to run away and curl up in a corner someplace to cry till it become all over. But if he did that, it might not be all over in a very good manner. Dean's leg turned into in agony as he moved over and took up position at the back of a pile of crates proper close to the Edicop scapning. He regarded again and noticed a blood path that had been left at the back of from the puncture wound created by way of Eddie's enamel sinking into his leg. Simply that memory changed into almost enough to paralyze him with worry, however he fought towards it. He had to rescue his brother. Sam had been looking after him and maintaining him secure since he'd been aged some days ago, and now it turned into time to return the desire. Time for this 4-year-old to behave just like the big brother he was purported to be. The boy slipped out from at the back of his hiding spot and lunged, sliding across the floor and right below Eddie. Dean bumped into Sam's frame, but didn't pay his brother any interest, concentrating alternatively at the mission at hand. With all of the force he may want to muster, the child stabbed the needle up and into the spider creature's stomach. Whilst the syringe changed into buried in its flesh, Dean driven on the plunger, liberating the sedative into the Edderkop scapning. He hoped it became fast-performing. Task completed, the small hunter rolled out from under the creature and tried to move slowly return to safety. But Eddie had different plans. It turned, taking all but considered one of its legs off of Sam, and confronted Dean. It opened its mouth to chunk at the kid, however all at once 2 arms grabbed Dean underneath his armpits and pulled him out of the manor. Dean determined himself being held all over again by means of Cass as the Edderkop scapning chomped down on Skinny Air. The angel was still protected in spider webs, however at that second Dean couldn't care much less. The boy hung on tight as his friend subsidized far from the monster that had attempted to devour him. The creature looked as even though it became on the brink of pounce on them, but then it all at once collapsed onto the concrete ground. And onto Sam. Sam cried out. "Sammy, you okay?" "I assume it cracked my ribs." The older hunter moaned. "Prevent your bitching, it could been manner worse." Dean teased with a wide grin on his face. "Gee, thank you for the sympathy. Any time. Now, are you able to get this issue off of me?" Cass located Dean back onto a crate and went to assist push the Edderkop scapning off of the trapped hunter. Once freed, Sam were given to his feet and moved quickly over to Dean. When he reached his little brother, he started out checking him over. "Are you okay, Dean? It didn't harm you once more, did it?" "I am fine, Sam, surely." Cass pulled me out of the way in time. It changed into Sam's flip to pick out Dean up and preserve him tightly. If Dean wasn't so happy that this ordeal became nearly over and that they had been all still alive, he would insisted that his brother placed him down. After a second, Sam sat the boy lower back onto the crate. "I am going to go get the venom to complete the antidote. We do not have a great deal time left." Dean nodded and watched as Sam knelt down subsequent to the Edderkop scapning's head. The hunter pried its mouth open with one hand and inserted an empty syringe with the alternative. Dean couldn't see the actual extraction technique, but in a counted of moments Sam pulled his hand lower back out and stood. He then held the needle up in a gesture of triumph. "Got it! Remarkable!" Dean exclaimed. Sam walked back over to them and handed it to Cass. "Keep onto this while I torch the creature. Dude, this whole area is gonna cross up in flames if you try this." Dean protested. "Properly, as soon as I mild it up, Cass can get us out of right here." The angel nodded his settlement. Dean's gaze accompanied Sam as the older brother walked lower back over to Eddie and started to pour accelerant all around the creature. When its frame was top and soaked, Sam flicked his lighter and tossed it onto the giant spider. The sedative ought to been very sturdy due to the fact the Edderkop scapning failed to even react as it burst into flames. Sam moved quickly again over to Dean and Cass. They quick collected up their components and then the angel picked up Dean and positioned a hand on Sam's shoulder. Inside the time it took Dean to blink, they were standing out of doors and deserted searching repair garage. "In which are we?" Dean asked. "This is in which we left your vehicle to make certain it might be secure." Sam spoke back. "Oh. Well, can we get to fixing me up now?" Dean noticed Sam check his watch and make a face. "Nicely, that failed to look good. Is it too overdue?" Dean requested in a small voice, simply slightly above a whisper. "It's going to be near." Sam answered. He walked over and opened the garage door. The screeching noise turned into eerily reminiscent of the warehouse door and made Dean balk. They walked inside and Sam placed his bag down at the trunk of the Impala and unzipped it. He pulled out a metallic thermos and took off the pinnacle. Subsequent, the hunter held out his hand and Cass positioned the syringe onto his palm. Sam squirted the liquid into the thermos, careful now not to get any on himself. Then he closed it up and shook it. "Permit try this," Dean proclaimed. "Now not yet," Sam responded. "Why now not?" "You need to take your clothes off first." "What? Why?" Dean did now not need to stand in the front of his brother and his buddy absolutely bare. "Your garments are not going to grow with you, Dean." "Dude, I'm no longer stripping in the front of you men." "Then we'll flip round." but you'll nevertheless ought to face me again to provide me the antidote. What in case you get some of my different clothes out and I will change into them? First off, we 1T have the greater time that could take, and secondly, your vintage clothes are a great deal too big for you and could fall off your frame leaving you naked in any case. Dean felt his face warm up with embarrassment. I don't need to do it, he mumbled. I recognize, Dean. Sam's voice was filled with sympathy. Right here. Cass shrugged off his trench coat and held it out to the boy. You could put this on and tie it loose sufficient on the way to nonetheless fit your needs when you develop. It's now not a lot, but it's going to cover you. Thank you, Cass. Dean flashed him a thankful smile. Cass placed Dean at the floor and both guys became far away from the boy. Dean pulled off his ripped-up, bloody Batman T blouse and dropped it down subsequent to himself. Then he yanked off his Spider-Man footwear and tossed them away, watching as they lit up while they hit the ground. Next came the socks. He struggled a touch with the pants but could not get them off without hurting himself more. Sam, I need some help. Positive. To his credit score, Sam didn't tease him or make it any greater awkward than the situation already became as he pulled the jeans from the little boy's legs. I were given the rest, Dean insisted. With a nod, Sam stood again up and grew to become around Dean. Sooner or later got the undies off and then slipped the tons too large trench coat over his thin shoulders. He controlled to roll up the sleeves and then used the Impala to drag himself to his feet. The belt for the coat became down beyond his knees, however he tied it anyway, understanding it would healthy better quickly. With any luck. Dean held himself up with one hand while maintaining the coat closed with the opposite. Okay, I'm ready. Allow us try this. Dean held his breath as Sam turned back around to face him. The much taller brother held the metal thermos in his hand. The boy stared at the object. So what? Do I gotta drink that crap? No. I give it to you the same way you got poisoned. Okay then. Let us rock and roll. Sam nodded. And Dean, if this doesn't work, I promise I'll find another way to fix this. I know. But this will work. Now let us stop the whole girly moment and get the show on the road. I want to be back to my usual handsome self. You were handsome? Sam teased. Shut up. Sam unscrewed the cap from the thermos. Dean felt himself begin to shake from a combination of stress, fear, and anticipation. Sam hesitated for a moment and Dean was about to snap at him to get on with it when the liquid hit him right in the face. Dean sputtered, spitting the foul liquid onto the oil-stained garage floor. At first, nothing happened. But then he felt a burning sensation in his eyes. He rubbed at them, letting go of the Impala, and ended up on the ground when his injured leg refused to support him. He let out a cry of pain that grew into a wail of pure agony as the burning spread throughout his body. Dean felt his bones shifting, ligaments popping, muscles pulling, and skin stretching. In the back of his mind he acknowledged that this was a good thing and meant that the antidote was doing its job, but that didn't stop the rest of his brain from being filled with white-hot pain. It was a relief when he lost consciousness. At first there was only darkness. But then a voice interrupted the complete nothingness that Dean Winchester had been drifting in. I don't know. He was out for quite a while last time. Maybe we should try to move him so he'll be more comfortable when he wakes up. Sam! That was definitely Sam's voice. I can transport you both to a motel, but I cannot bring your car. And that was Cass. Dean would kill me if I left his car behind again. Especially if something happens to it. I can take him and you can drive. No way. I'm not letting him out of my sight for a long time after all of this. Dude, I didn't know you cared so much. Dean mumbled as he opened his eyes. Sam's worried expression greeted him. His brother's face hovered closely over Dean. Dean! You're awake. Yeah, Captain Obvious, I'm awake. And you're not respecting the whole personal space rule. Dean commented as he struggled into a sitting position. Screw personal space. Sam replied as he threw his arms around Dean and hugged him tightly. And that's when Dean realized that he was definitely back to his correct age because his little brother, while still taller than him, no longer dwarfed him in size. I'm back to normal, Dean exclaimed, looking down at himself as Sam released him. Well, your screwed up definition of normal anyways. Sam responded. Dean tried to get up, only to groan in pain when his leg protested. Shifting the trench coat so that he could look at the offending limb, the hunter saw the deep puncture mark that Eddie's tooth had made right below his knee and the deep bruising that covered his skin. Come to think of it, his whole body felt like one big bruise. Oh man! I grow 26 years older and my body still hasn't healed? That much time has not actually passed. Cass offered, dude, this sucks. Hey, don't expect Cass or me to carry you around anymore either. Sam advised with a smirk, trust me, I wouldn't ask. Dean shot back. Then he grabbed onto the back of the Impala and pulled himself to his feet. He then tightened the belt on the trench coat to make sure it stayed closed. Leaning against his car, the now 30-year-old man smiled at his friends. But thanks for everything. For a moment it looked as though Sam would tease him, but then his once again little brother just returned the smile. Anytime, Cass spoke at the same time. You're welcome, Dean. Embarrassed by the emotions running through him, Dean changed the subject quickly. Dude, I'm starving. You guys feel like grabbing a burger? I don't need anything. Cass informed him. If you will be all right, Dean, I must be on my way. Sure, Cass. Go have fun. Cass cocked his head to the side. I am continuing my mission, not searching for entertainment. Dean laughed. Whatever, dude. Look, thanks again. And could you pop in on Bobby and let him know that everything worked out okay and that we'll give him a call in a bit? That will not be a problem. And with that, Cass was gone. Dean turned to his brother. So Sammy, what about you? You up for some greasy diner food? Sounds good. Sam replied. But first, let us get you fixed up a bit. You look like crap. Dean opened his mouth to respond, but Sam raised a hand to cut him off. Yeah, I know. You still look better than I do, so you're finally admitting it then. Dean grinned. You're such a jerk, bitch. Well, at least your profanities aren't coming from a 4-year-old's mouth anymore. That was just wrong, man. You're just jealous because I had a cooler vocabulary than you did at that age. Dean went to walk to the front of the car, but his left leg gave out and he ended up face down on the cement. Son of a bitch, Dean! You okay? Peachy. Sam rushed over and helped him to his feet. Dean slung an arm over Sam's shoulders and Sam wrapped his arm around Dean's waist. You sure you can't pick me up? Dean joked. Sorry, but those days are over. And not a moment too soon. Sam began to lead him over to the front passenger door. Dude, wrong side. I'm driving. No, you're not, Dean. I can reach the pedals again. So yeah, I am. Dean, your leg is a mess. So what? I use my other leg. Keep arguing and I'll put you back in your booster seat. Sam threatened. You wouldn't try me. Look, you can drive as soon as we get you somewhere where I can patch up that leg and get you some painkillers, okay? Fine. Dean reluctantly agreed. Sam leaned him against the back door as he went to open the front one. Dean turned his head and almost jumped when he saw a spider crawling across the roof of the Impala. Dean stared at it for a moment and then tore his gaze away to scan the rest of the garage. There didn't appear to be any more of the disgusting 8-legged pests. Sam touched his arm. Dean? What's up, spider? Dean resumed staring at the tiny terror. It's just a regular spider, Dean. Nothing to worry about. Leave it alone and get in the car before you fall over again. Yeah. Dean replied. He was going to follow Sam's suggestion, but just then the spider turned and began to crawl right at him. Without hesitation, Dean brought his fist down on the arachnid, grinning at the feel of its tiny body crunching under his hand. The end. Thanks for watching. Subscribe our channel for more such videos.